as we get suited, booted, ready for the night. Perfect space to do it in. Divine Ross, Divine Night. One of the biggest questions that I get asked a lot is the topic about sex. Talking about sex, dealing with like what sex is. Last year, no. I forgot when I dropped it. But I dropped the first sex to higher understanding. After dropping the first lecture, Sex to Higher Understanding, I went through my own process. Of really understanding the aptitude of, if I ask the question, simple question, your first sexual experience. Most people will talk about their virginity, the first time they saw porno, things of that nature. But the more that I understand the higher drive, I remember always talking about, I had a high sex drive, and I thought the high sex drive meant I needed to have a lot of sex, because I didn't. A lot of us don't understand the aptitude of what sex is. Like the aptitude of the basis, always having sex on the brain becomes a negative connotation. All of these different negative connotations, not understanding that sex is communication. The sacred energy exchange is the communication of information. If the physical is the byproduct of what I'm creating inside of my space, then everything that I do in that ritual of what sex is, and we're going to get deeper into it tonight. From the first lecture, I broke down the way of the superior man, talked about opening yourself up, the breathing exercises, allowing yourself to be inside of that space. And then I want to get deeper into the communication aspect, the comprehension, your emotional intelligence. Remember, you've been doing everything that you've been needing to do. You've been doing it unconsciously from the perspective of the physical. So, like, as long as we think of the physical being first, things like seduction, things like manipulation, instead of understanding that seduction is the transmission and the manipulation is the transmutation, you're doing these things, but you're doing it in the lower. We always do it in lower keys because we learn based in survival. So something as simple as you communicating through this physical act to create something from the highest point that we think, okay, cool, I'm supposed to. That's why when a lot of people go into their celibacy, semen retention, there's never nothing that's behind it. There's never nothing behind it. If you ever looked up down your Facebook page and you see people talking about, I've been celibate for a year and niggas still in my inbox, they aren't worthy. You got to understand that when you take on anything, you're communicating, I'm celibate. Your comprehension is the emotional intelligence. So everything that comes into your space is helping you comprehend this communication and then what you create. Remember, everything's created from the base synonymous with your shadow. Everything's created from the basis of your shadow. Everything that you learn inside of your shadow. The way that you learn how to interact or the intercourse into your space, how you learn to react. So if your first experience, if I ask you what was your first experience, what did your first experience give you? What did you get from your first experience? A lot of my people that I've had their consultations with and breaking down the sessions with them, they're like, I got a baby through the sexual trauma. This happened, things of this narrative. But then all this week, we were talking about that argument. And a lot of times I don't comprehend. If I don't comprehend that first argument, I'm going to create things based on that argument. That's me having sex with myself. In that sense, you masturbating with the thought. You're seducing your in your conditions. You're manipulating these conditions to get something based on that survival. You see how everything goes back to that original point. I don't care what you do. I remember for a long time, like I was thinking, like, yeah, I got a high sex drive because I like to have sex. I didn't have no idea what the high sex drive was. I had a very low sex drive, or I had a very low tolerance. What I really had was a very high tolerance for the pain, for the feeling, for the little death. I had a high tolerance that would allow me to experience the death. But since what am I communicating? What is my comprehension with the information? So a lot of times when you're sitting in that space and you're wondering, like, now you go back and think about times when you sat there in the space, you were like, yo, my money ain't right, I ain't having sex. Or if this ain't right, I ain't doing this. And things of that narrative. That was you communicating. But you have to understand the basis of that communication is the emotion that you feel based on that. How do you feel with that aspect and that information? See, a lot of things that we've been cultivated with ourselves in that mindset, we try to keep it in that variation or these variables to keep us moving based in that survival. So a lot of things that that sacred energy exchange, that's the communication. What are you communicating? It's like, you ever had sex with somebody and you were at a certain point in your life, like your energy was at a certain point, whether you knew it or not, you were conscious of it or not, or aware of it. Your energy was at a certain level, such as you had this certain job, you worked, you had money, you were in a certain position. So anybody that connected to you based on that through a physical aptitude was just another variation of how you use your energy to get something. Because that's the emotional aspect. Remember, being in that recessive sense, and that's what we're going to be getting into tonight, that recessive narrative. You are being the receptor. The shadow is receptive. The shadow is that receptive energy. The shadow is the receptive space. The shadow has no bias. The only biases that are inside of your shadow are the things that you have left unresolved. So every time that you go into a space, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get what you need and what you want. Welcome to the land of duality. You don't get what you need. You don't get what you want in every space that you go into. But that communication is the key. It isn't the communication that's the key. It's the comprehension. Are you comprehending yourself? Are you looking at your reactions? Remember, we're talking about that argument. I talked about that argument in this week's podcast, in the video, in the lives. What is that conversation that you continuously have in your mind that you created that scenario? I remember I created an entire scenario in my mind. We're going to start at that basis. I created a scenario in my mind of how I wanted my life to be, how my life should be. But the basis of my scenario, until I got to the basis of how I created that scenario, everything that came up based on resistance, not getting what I wanted, things of that narrative, they were based on the shadow. It's always based in your shadow. It's based in your darkness. It's based in those 13 gates, i.e. your zodiac. It's based in the 13 gates, i.e. in your human design. Some of you are living, a lot of us are you're living outside of you're not living in your design because you don't even know what your design is. Me, I've talked about it before. I'm a manifested generator. So I am to inform, impact based on listening and learning how to set the tone for a response. That is my design. So everything that I do, that information has to, I was always doing it. I would get frustrated. That guidepost, the reason I would get frustrated is because I wasn't waiting. I wasn't patient. Where did I learn patience? I learned that if I give my all, it was usually in a physical sense, because that's what you learned. The survival narrative. That survival narrative is what you've been communicating through this entire time. Your emotional intelligence has been the reason that it's worked for so long. The reason that it works for so long. The reason that you can see Miss Betty Jean and Miss in them going to church every day is because their emotional intelligence matches that story. But every time you want to change your space or communicate to the universe or to find that answer, you got to have the emotional intelligence to tap into it. Or you're only going to create based on your level of intelligence with your emotions. That intelligence, that genius, that heart path. These are those parts on that narrative. That's what we don't get into tonight. You're frustrated because of reciprocation. One of the biggest things that I had to forgive myself for, one of the biggest things that you're going to forgive yourself for, and I give this out to my clients all the time, the biggest thing that you're going to apologize for is due to the survival complex, someone that is not reciprocating to you in the way that you feel that it should reciprocate to you, you feel it as a challenge. So you automatically go into the self-destruct. You're not getting what you want. But have you defined the plan of what you wanted? Have you defined your plan? Or is it based on a pattern? The pattern's already created. It's based on the shadow. See, a lot of times when we're going into these spaces, your pattern's based on your shadow. Those unresolved aspects that you haven't dealt with. So your wants are all over the place. I just want this, this, and this. Okay, cool. What's your plan? What is your plan to maintain that? See, that pattern of maintaining the pattern. We talked about, do you have a plan of action or do you have a pattern you just want to keep replacing parts? That reciprocation of what you're getting inside of that space and not learning that lesson. That's what's fucking up a lot of, that's what fucked up a lot of the things that I was doing. Or when I say it fucked up a lot of things, it was more into this sense of I couldn't see what I needed to see because of my emotions. I couldn't see it because I was angry. So naturally I'm angry, but I don't understand why I feel like I'm angry. Why am I angry? Feel like I'm a failure. I'm insecure, doubt, guilt. We go through these same emotions and these breakdowns of these emotions every year, every damn week. And we going deeper because I'm showing these are the connections. It's like I remember back in the day, like accepting those things. Babe, I know you frustrated. Let's go lay down. Let's go lay down. All I'm doing is avoiding it. You're replacing things. See, from the physical aspect, we replace things. From the physical sense, you replace things. And you just kept replacing things. All based on that first argument. That first argument, you created multiple variations. That first variation, remember I've talked about, we go into this, we're talking about the aspects of the physical or the inner child, which is where the indoctrination process, a lot of the things that you go through, it's not based on just 1 through 12. It's based on that entire space. Some of us, through your traumatic experience, you never left that. So even the way that you learn how to develop in this exchange that you're communicating, in comprehension, in that communicating, breaking down in that comprehension, you keep getting stuck. You keep creating the same thing. You keep trying to create these avenues only based on the pattern. I remember for a long time, I created a lot of things based on a pattern. I thought it was me being safe. Even when I stepped out of my comfort zone, I stepped out of that first ring and stepped into the other ring. It was still my comfort zone. So because I always, at the end of the day, when something didn't work, I would always go back to the same argument. That's why I keep telling you about these arguments. That argument that you have not resolved, that is the argument that you have not resolved, that is where your emotions or your feminine aspect lies. Everything that you build based on that, that's the masculine aspect. So I've talked about this aspect in sex before. You've been creating from a singular point, not understanding and leaving the other half gone. That's why whenever you read anything talking about the separation of the gods, and you separated from yourself, you separated from your soul, all of these aspects, it wasn't talking about a physical person. It was talking about you, that physical aspect that you're going to go search for. You're looking for yourself. You're looking for the other parts of your soul. You're looking for that. You've experienced soul loss since you've been down here. The longer that you stay down here, not doing this internal work, the more loss that you feel from your soul. Your soul is separated in these different, in these 70, the 72 Goetias, the 72 angels. Your soul loss is based in those gates, in these aspects of yourself. So now when you're looking into your space, what would it look like? Based on your argument, what would it look like? Anything that goes against you. Your reasoning, your thought process, your automatic thought, the things we've been getting over in these last couple of weeks, all of those aspects go into your intercourse, your intimacy, your affection, the love that you want, the affection that you desire. All of those aspects are based on that shadow. Because once I started understanding the aspects and these points of my shadow, I really stopped. The urge was still there. See, a lot of times when people think about, oh, I'm spiritual now, so now I'm going to be celibate and I practice semen retention, you're just suppressing the urge. The key to you tapping into your energy is not suppressing that urge, bringing it to the higher drive, bringing it to the higher point, releasing it from that gateway, releasing your soul, or that fraction of your soul, releasing it from shame, releasing it from doubt, releasing it from the guilt. And the only way that you do that is by sitting in those spaces, sitting in where you feel like you failed, sitting in where you feel like you're insecure about some shit, your jealousy. You have to sit in those aspects, because if you don't sit in them, when somebody comes into your space and you communicate to them based on that original argument, what do you think you're communicating to them? I talked about that in the podcast. 90% of conversations from an unhealed or unresolved space with yourself, whether you want to deal with it or not, does not matter to me. But 90% of your conversation is based on the comprehension to set the tone for your argument, where your emotional intelligence is at. You're already angry, you're already mad, you're already upset, you're already depressed, you're already in that space. You're just not sitting in it. You're relevant to it. So now everything that you go into has to have that relevance. So even when you feel like you've lost something in the aspects of an evolution, you got to evolve with the space. I tell people all the time when it comes to your work, once you start this work, you got to keep going. A lot of times people get into their work and you start getting a couple things. Oh, you got a bag, you got some money, you got this, you got you got this relationship, you got these things in order. Those are your tests. Those are your tests. Are you going to respond? That means going to the aspects of understanding, information, planning, comprehending your emotions, or are you going to react? See, a lot of times we go into these spaces, you're going in based on reaction. Remember, I told you the difference between exposure and vulnerability. See, a lot of times when we think that we're being open, you think you're being vulnerable. You're not being vulnerable. How can you be vulnerable if you have not assessed that space? You haven't assessed those emotions. How can you be vulnerable and be open and in your truth and be honest if you have not explored that space intimately with yourself? If you've not went to that level of intimacy, you'll always say what you don't want, and you'll always say what you do want, and you'll always go for it in the base of an obsession. It becomes an obsession. Remember that I'm talking about that aspect of that test, that testing aspect that happens to you when you're in that test. When your spirit team tests your gangster and see where you really at, When you made that, you know what? I'm gonna do this, this, and this. All right, cool. They're gonna test your gangster. They're gonna test you to see where you're truly at. Remember, you're not getting things based on where you were. You're not getting things based on where you were. You get things based on where you're at. You don't get things based on where you were or where you're going. You get things based on where you're at. And if you're at this point and your shadow is the base, that's where all your comprehension is, and you only comprehend it through this shadow, what do you think you're going to create? You're always going to create a resistance for yourself. This is the aspect of that positive and living in the positive or living in the flow. What flow are you in? Are you in the stagnancy of your flow, or are you in the flow? Or because that flow has the bus applying pressure and drawing blood. That's my purpose. It's to apply pressure and draw blood. That's my purpose. I will apply pressure and draw blood. That's my purpose. But with that purpose, it's not based on any human. It's not based on what you would call. Yeah, exactly. Like you came out like, nigga, you can't. Because that nigga, he wasn't the original seed. You only can receive based on from where you are. You cannot get anything more than what you already have inside the space. So if the space is filled and you got frustrations, insecurities, doubts, all of these aspects, and you translated these and you seduced your ego, it leaves you subdued in this seduction or seduced. So guess what you're going to be manipulated inside of your space? You're going to make everything fit that space. This is where we get all these things based on the lower levels of the aspects of gender. Motherfucker stuck in the lower aspects of gender. You want to still be a man. You still want to be a woman. You still want to be this independent facet. You want to be a real man. You want to be, nigga, I'm androgynous. I'm a fucking god. I'm a titan. I'm an ancient. I'm beyond those scapes. So now when I look back, it's impartial. See, a lot of times you think about things like your sex drive. I got a high sex drive because I like to have sex. That don't mean you have a high sex drive. As I opened up with, you just have a high tolerance. You have a high tolerance for the seduction and manipulation. You haven't learned how to transmute. The first post that I put up this week was, I don't care if part of your daily routine is when you get in the shower, you rub one out. I threw out a quick ritual to that. When you get in the shower and you thinking about shorty at the gym, you thinking about shorty at the dentist, you thinking about shorty, you think about bro at the gym, whatever, make them the task. Think about the task that you need to take on that day. Think about the task that you need to take on in the day. Hold that energy in your mind, the task that you want to get done in the day. Hold that in your mind. Go ahead and do your thing. Do your business. Lights off, candles, however you take your shower early in the AM. Get real intimate with yourself. Get real intimate with yourself. When you get to a point where you feel like you're about to release, hold it. Hold it. Hold it. Hold it until the task is done. That means if you visualize a clock in the background and you visualize giving back shots, or you visualize riding this dude, riding whatever visualization you put into your mind, what does that visualization represent? What does shorty represent? Teaching y'all not to suppress that shit. You should not be feeling in a certain way like, man, I should feel bad for looking at short. Why? That is the negative aspect. You're supposed to feel something about it. It's the things that stop you with the shame, your past, the unresolved, the shit that come up in your shadow. Maybe I won't be good enough, or maybe they don't think this. It don't matter what they think. It's what scenario you created inside of your mind to become impartial. Because once you've gotten, because it boils down to it anyway, most of the motherfuckers in a physical aspect, you just want to tap it. You want to fuck anyway. So after that, then what? You got to learn how to go past that point. That's the infatuation. You infatuated with shorty booty. You infatuated with shorty old buddy in the sweatpants. You infatuated. Remember, you got to get past the point of infatuation. That's where your emotional intelligence kicks in. See, that emotional relevance is in the infatuation. The emotional intelligence is what remember, you eat everything down here based on emotions. That infatuation is they got shorty in a Fashion Nova outfit with some new headphones, with some new JBLs in the ear, and you work on music, or you like bass in your music. You looking at that, it's sold to you in that way. But since you're looking at it through a shameful aspect, or the insecurity or the doubt, what does it become in the byproduct? That's the byproduct that's created. You keep creating the money. You create all of these streams. So now you can look at a person, like use an example, using an entertainer that has millions of dollars, ain't nothing really expensive to them, but it looks sick as fuck. But then you look at them up, like, because you want to you living in your duality of yourself. That's how you visualize. That's how you want to see yourself. Okay, see yourself that way. See yourself that way. The same way that the same way that we deal with deities, the same way that you integrate with deities is the same way you can integrate with whatever. That's what they're there for. We got to stop looking at things based. They got all this money, they ain't doing nothing for our neighborhoods. They ain't doing what the fuck they need to do for your shit. If you can say if I say out of my mouth, this is an illusion, and I got to own my story and my narrative to change the way my life is, and I got to start, means I got to plant those new seeds. See, y'all want to see, a lot of times we're looking at the instant gratification process, which is consumed, and you see in the reflection of social media. You see the instant gratification process. You see people making clips of Bobby Hemmett videos. You see people making clips of C. Freeman L videos. You see people making clips of videos, taking over what somebody else already has done to say, okay, this is the point we're at. But there's very little there's very little simplifying it to the emotional aspect. Your emotions run everything down here. You ain't got the lower your emotional intelligence, the more you need something physically, the more physical you become, the lower your emotions, the lower or the less intimate you are with your emotions, the more physical you become. The more physical you become with things. We can go back and forth. You're talking about women, but women, when they did the welfare thing and they came into that space and then they kept it, and then niggas out here doing this. I was thinking about that earlier. Like, you got to think about the aspect of the connection. See, in survival mode, we think about attachment. In survival mode, you're thinking about attachment. So you're obsessed. So now you're stuck in infatuation. So now you're stuck in your lower levels of your worth. So everything in your emotional intelligence up to a certain point worked for you. That emotional intelligence worked for your ass for your low level emotional intelligence. It worked for you a long time. You got things from it. You got kids. You got money. You got a job. You got a house. You got some things. But guess what? That shit don't work no more. If you're noticing it doesn't work anymore, what you're seeing is now the runoff. Even when you're looking at aspects, you got to go deeper into the aspect to keep you what we get stuck in. Remember, I told you that time is emotion. Time is emotion. So everything down here is based in the basis of emotion. So somebody that, if I wake up at 5 a.m., I wake up at 4:30, get ready for my day. I start my day at 5 o'clock every single day. Even when I don't get out of bed, I'm doing something to start my day or to create my day. The mental aptitude of sex That's that level of communication. That's the communication and comprehension. So yeah, your psychic abilities, the realms. Yes, I was actually about to say that. Like the same way that they did the mind meld is the same thing that they did in Demolition Man. And if you go watch from Demolition Man, then go look at the second Judge Dredd movie when they did Dredd, the second version, when they remade it. And y'all remember when he was sitting in there he was sitting in the space and like he got like she had her helmet off, so he got in her head and she bit that nigga shit off in his head and had that nigga stuck. That's where you at mentally. But if you only look at things based on the physical, remember, we have to shift out of the physical being our primary. The physical is nothing but an auxiliary. This is an auxiliary. This is your avatar. It's the auxiliary functions of whatever your mental state and your emotional state is. So the less integrated I am internally, the more distorted this version becomes. The more I'm dependent upon the physical to create or maintain this structure. I have to be, so now you got to look at every narrative was based in survival. To be a man was never to show emotions. Shuts off the emotional aspect. But we're not talking about man and being the man. We're talking about man and being in the masculine sense. The masculine is separated from the feminine. So when you think about the feminine movements and all of that, it's the feminization. The feminine aspect was removed, but it was still stuck in the masculine. The masculine came forward. So on both ends of this gender, the feminine has been suppressed. We know the feminine has been suppressed, but we're not breaking down how the feminine has been suppressed. The feminine is not just, when we think about the divine feminine, the divine masculine, we still make it separate. We still separate it. We stay stuck in this duality. So now you're looking for a divine masculine man or a divine feminine woman. You're looking for a divine feminine or a divine masculine. Those are two bodies in the same space. Those are two bodies within the same space. That's two bodies of energy in the same space. You know, so where's your drive at? This is I remember I had a conversation with one of my long-time clients, and they were like, and I basically was like, as a therapist, I am a sex worker. As an energy reader, as a shadows, I'm a sex worker. That's what I am, a sex worker. Because I know how to manipulate and transmute energy. I know how to create spaces to transmute and manipulate energy. I'm a sex worker. That's why when you go all the way back to the priestesses, priestesses, and you had to go bring them offers, it would be the modern day sex worker. The same thing. So when you're thinking about reciprocation, you have to, when you're shifting into this higher level of drive, you're removing, remember, we're talking about becoming more and more impartial, removing the biases. That's why right now they got that Kelly Price and R. Kelly shit coming out right now. It's another way to shut down your aspects. That's why I made that one post. I shared that one post talking about, and I knew exactly what I was doing when I posted it. Everybody was like, yo, that nigga that used to pick up the girls in the box Chevys and shit, and the girls always be like, you a little boy. Or the dudes be like, you a little girl. They were learning to communicate. That was their communication and comprehension of their energy. That was the basis. When we think about sexual traumas, when you think about how you learn certain aspects for yourself, where you thought about these aspects inside of your space, those are the first communications that fit your argument. These are the bases of your argument. That argument that you keep having with yourself, that argument of failure, that argument of doubt, that argument of romanticizing this life that you wanted, this argument that you keep having with yourself. And then you keep creating things based only on that argument. That's why whenever something comes into your space that is totally abnormal, it takes you out the blue, makes you feel good, you got to go past the point of infatuation. You got to understand why. If this is making me feel good, I got to say, fuck making me feel good. This is making me better. See, you got to understand shit's supposed to be, everything around you is taking you to the better point. So everything you got to sit in it. A lot of times, a lot of us have not sat in our emotions. To sit in your emotions, which leads to, before I go deep, before I forget that point, that's why I created the retreat for. It's going to be into that aspect. There's so many times that we get stuck in this mindset of just thinking sex is simply physical. But you got to think about your mentality when you went in there. That's the DNA. What's written in your DNA? Your human design breaks down to 64 codons inside of your DNA. Your zodiac, your natal chart, it breaks down to 13 gates that are within your human design. And how you learn how to respond, react, reflect, project, or manifest. Whatever you do inside of your space, inform, response, impact. What you're doing inside of your space. So a lot of times when you find yourself frustrated is because you've been living outside of your design. And in everything since you've been living outside of your design, since you came into your space, you've been living outside of your design the entire time. Now, when you come forced to have to, damn, I have been living outside of my design. You've been living outside of your means. This is what I mean by, like, everything is a byproduct. Everything is a byproduct of those emotions. You living outside of your means. You living based on relevance. You live based on relevance. You live that check to check. You live in these certain aspects with yourself. All of these aspects are reflections of your emotions. So when you come into a space and somebody's telling you about those emotions or bringing those emotions to the center, to the surface, that's the abnormal being now made normal. That's these conversations that make motherfuckers uncomfortable. You got to remove the bias aspect. I can, like, use the example. I can speak through the bias and use that as, I only use the bias as an example to illustrate. An example of me using a bias to illustrate illustrate something is me pulling cards. Me using the tarot deck. That's me understanding using these bias points as the mirrors to reflect and illustrate. That's the transmutation. You do it all the time when you manipulate, and you do it all the time. Every Valentine's Day that you went to go get cards and flowers, every birthday, every Christmas, you've been doing all this shit unconsciously. You've been manipulating the space to serve the purpose of your survival. When you stop going through that space of that survival and you really start sitting down with yourself and really realizing these structures that you created for yourself, that's where the emotion that you feeling was already present. That's why you created that. That was your mask to your insecurity, your doubt, the argument, the negative self-talk, all of those aspects you kept under wraps. That's why when you come into your awakening, your first level of enlightenment, and all that shit's bright and shining up, and I tell y'all about those tests, because I remember all those tests. Where are you at? Are you willing to make the decision? Are you willing to make the decision that is against your old narrative of survival? Are you willing to make that choice? See, a lot of times we get scared to make that choice because of what it means, what we think that it means. I'm not going to be looked at the same way. And I'm not going to be, if I make this decision, what does it say about everything around me? Everything around me changes. It's the acceptance of that change. That's what you're creating inside of your space. I talked about it in the polygamy lecture. Every space that you go into separated, of course, you're going to have everything. You compartmentalize your life. Excellent question. Depending on the person popping up in that is an excellent question. Depending on the person popping up inside of your dream, depending on the person popping up in your dream, that sexual experience, that astral projection, whenever that person pops up, have you defined this person in your life? Is this person someone that you know, you do not know? What is it about this person, the description of this person, the feelings that came up, everything that you're doing. Now, remember, we bring everything to the higher sense. So it's like, how did you feel when you saw this person? What was this person wearing? What was this person doing? The actions, the thought processes, everything, because everything in the astral space is only your thoughts. Everything in the astral space is only your thoughts. Mm-hmm. A lot of time, the one thing for in one aspect, when certain people come into your space, like certain women, men, women, whoever come into your space, if to a basis, it's the emotional or knowledge. So if you're a masculine presence comes into your space, that means you're tapping into that new level of knowledge for you. It's another level of knowledge that you must now come into. Feminine come into your space, it's a new level of emotions that you got to understand. Mm-hmm. For that, in that case, that's explaining your merge. Whenever you're seeing certain, like when there's like no sex, it means that you're inside of that space. You're coming into your merge. See, like a lot of times people have sex dreams. You have like a man come in your dream, and some shit, a woman come into your dream. You're still separated in a certain spot. The more and more intimacy that you start feeling in it, there was a hammock. That means relax. Every time I've seen a hammock, it means to relax. It's time to relax in the intimate aspects of you. It's time to relax in the intimate aspects of what you know. It's time to relax in the intimate aspects of what you know. It's time to start relaxing in that energy. It's time to start relaxing and getting to know and understanding and embracing what you know. All into the aspects. Like when you looking at certain things, like as that came, she said the hammock, I was like, relax. She said the intimacy aspect, relaxing with that intimate energy with yourself. You're getting more intimate. You're getting closer to. You're getting closer to. You're getting closer to that next step. Because after a while, having that dream and embracing that is going to separate again, because you're going into a new space. Similar to like talking about with Dawson, say you feel like somebody was riding him. How did you feel when it happened? Like, how did you feel? Like you're embracing these feelings. All of these things are tools in the aspects of you embracing the feelings. It's not about feeling bad. It's not about feeling like, oh my God, I'm cheating on my significant other. No, because those are human narratives. I remember having a whole conversation in the consultation, and the young lady, she was like, yo, I don't look at other men, and I don't do this and I don't do this. I was like, why not? She was like, because I'm in a relationship and I'm faithful. You looking at another person, what did you feel in that feeling? What did you feel? Did you feel an inflection? What did you feel? Did the heat rise? What did it mean? Like, you got to take it to the next higher aspect of yourself, because that's what's needed. See, we've been giving this narrative on the physical sense when it comes to sex, that if you have this feeling outside of a thought, now you want to create a variable down here. Like motherfuckers think about polygamy. Polygamy is nothing but the fucking understanding all energy coming together in that space. So when I read and study on polygamy, I have no thought in my mind. I have no thought based on past on my mind of like, you know what? That must mean I need to have multiple wives. I don't have that thought. Not denying that thought or denouncing that thought, because if I denounce that thought, then I won't be able to use it, because I do it every single day. I do that in a sense every single day when it comes based on opportunities of resources. See, you shut yourself down based on resources, because in your mind, what we thought, think about when we were in school, and you're like, ooh, you wrote the letter, yes or no, or the only time someone talked, it was based on a reciprocation of getting something in a physical sense. That's the only way you kept that connected. Because we learned based on attachment, based on survival. That means as long as this is in my space, I can keep doing what I'm doing. I ain't got to change. But when you're looking at shit based on connections and experience, those resources start to change. The way you start looking at these resources start to change. You stop looking at it based on, oh, Shorty can do this for me. Because think about it when you go into the narrative. Shorty did all these things for me, or he did all these things for me. I'm gonna give that nigga some dick. I'm gonna give Shorty some pussy. I'm gonna give. Why? Because you still stuck in the physical aspect. That's why when you come into certain space, certain people, and no matter you try to run this whole fucking game on them to seduce and manipulate the space to keep them attached to you so it doesn't go anywhere else, that's why your shit start to diminish. Because you wanted it based on the scenario inside of your mind. That going back to your first argument, I can prove something to somebody. I can prove, and it goes back to that experience. I can prove to something back here in my shadow that I can do it now. That's not what it's there for. That's not what it's there for. It's there to teach you something about yourself. Everything else is a byproduct of what you learn. That's why a lot of times you get stuck in that time loop or that cycle of your patterns exposed. What you were used to receiving, what you were used to based on how you used to reciprocate. And then you get close. You get close to the honesty that you need to go to the next level. But then you break away from it. Why? Because you don't want to face that argument. 90% of what you do from a traumatic experience is to set the terms for your argument based on your level of emotional intelligence. So if you're used to yelling at every fucking thing, being mad all the fucking time, then you come into a space where somebody looks at you for being mad and I was about to go whoop somebody's ass. Okay. I almost got arrested. Maybe you needed it. And then you look at them with shock. I can't believe you want me. Okay. You need to sit the fuck down. You're already locked up. You're already locked up. You locked up in the emotional relevance. Those bars are your emotion. You locked up in it anyway. It makes you think about everything that we want to keep outside of ourselves to create this variation. Especially you think about cops is racist and they wanted us to arrest people. And then I was always thinking about back in the day, like there was like rap song motherfuckers. I forgot who said it. Some rappers that said it. You got motherfuckers out here right now that you'll say free my dogs, but you won't tell them to stop not going to jail. Why? Because it fits your argument. They were just trying to survive and make shit for their family. There was, okay, cool. I talked about it in the Riot and Reason lecture. I was talking about all these niggas out here busting into these stores, grabbing TVs, grabbing all these clothes. All right, cool. You got all that shit. You stole all this merchandise. After you sell off them TVs. After you sold all them fucking TVs. How much money did you make after you sold all them TVs? Why don't you go get an LLC? Go get a dropship site. Damn, I ain't never thought about that because you ain't never really thought. See, we keep doing things in this space, not understanding that what the basis of the historical aspects of the space was. So we just keep creating based on the human narrative of ourselves. Exactly. I'm not going to stop you from hanging yourself because that's what you need. You keep going back to it. I remember one thing my pops always used to say, you gonna keep doing, I'm gonna keep you doing it till what? Till you get to a point. And I just think that was like the most horrible thing my pops would do. Like, oh my God, my but in reality, it was from his it's exactly what the fuck I needed. I needed that type of shit. Because now when I go back and look at those spaces and owning that part of my story and changing this very narrative, now that doesn't exist. Remember I talked about it, you becoming infamous. Are you willing to make the decisions that remove you from bias? Are you willing to make the decisions that remove you from a point of being partial, living in that Stockholm syndrome in your life? Most of y'all most motherfuckers' arguments right now is based on Stockholm syndrome. You don't even realize how much you acting like your mother because the background of your life is your mother. The background of your life or your argument is your mother. So until you deal with that argument that you keep having based on your mother being the background, everything you create a byproduct is based on that. So now your worth, your value, everything that you do is based on that. I'm trying not to be that. Now you got all these multiple streams of thought going on and they all need to live. But since you have not done the discipline on the internal aspect, all of these thoughts need to live based on the hope narrative. When one of those things work, you want to put all of that into that. You want to run all of that through that one stream. Can't do that. That ain't how this shit work. You want to run everything through that one stream. That's not what that stream is there for. That stream is to teach you how to make more streams. That new stream coming into your space is told to teach you how to make new streams. But since we're stuck in this survival narrative, soon as something comes into your space, you want to hold it forever for where it's at. So now I broke down the aspect of the missing aspect. One of the newest things that I've developed in my mindset is I don't miss anything. And I've owned not missing anything. Because to miss something is a discredit and a disservice to it, to me, and to whatever it is. Because my emotions will be locked into that space. It's like, use an example. I miss McDonald's. I miss the orange high C at McDonald's. My emotions are now locked into that space. So until I feed that urge, that means create that foundation for that urge, and then create the variations in the environment for it to materialize into my space. That's where the emotion comes up from. That's where the guilt, that's where the doubt, that's where it lives, that's where it comes from. The basis of that shadow. You just keep creating based on that narrative until you suppress it. You go a little bit further in the circle. You go around in a circle. You go back around a little bit more, come right back to it. Oh my God. Now we're thinking about now you think about the expensiveness and all of these aspects, the quality of things, the name that you're putting on it. What are you defining these things as in your space? Oh, that's high quality. That's high quality. That means I got to do this, this, and this, because we are consumed through the physical narrative of that sexual energy exchange, that sacred energy exchange of more. The more that I have, if I have more of this, then I can be this. That I have more of this, then I can be this. So now you're looking at relevance. You put your happiness is a relevance of whatever you have inside of your space. So when you don't have it, your truth shows. It's like your truth shows. Now you at a point where your truth is showing and you're like, I don't know how to deal with it. I've never dealt with it before. Or the way that I dealt with it was based on avoidance. The way that I dealt with it was based on separation. The way that I dealt with it was some other way. But if you go, give you an example. Go look up the Mary J. Blige story. Go look up the Mary J. Blige. Go look up the Mary J. Blige biopic that she got out. She said she never felt worthy at all. With everything that she had, she lived in a space that was based on she never had any worth to herself. Because the only thing that she learned how to do was to sell her story of pain. So since she got everything based off of pain and not owning that story, she lost everything based on pain. The pain has to continue. The pain has to magnify. That frustration has to magnify. That argument has to live until you deal with it. I don't care what you do, how far you want to go ahead, that argument has to be dealt with. That conversation has to be had. That budget needs to be set. See, a lot of times when we're thinking about the byproduct, the budget, my emotional intelligence, I only budget based on my mental intelligence. I bet you what they want to boil down to. One of the earliest things that I've always said was there's no going back. I remember saying that shit to myself for fucking months. Before I went to bed, there's no going back. 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 Study all, follow none. Study all, follow none. Creating new mantras, creating the new scriptures in the Bible of Lucifer. Creating all the new scriptures in my subconscious, in the new complex, in the new cathedral. And now when I'm in that space, I understand that if I don't feel anything inside of that space, that means it's a space I'm no longer there for. That means I'm present. See, before I went to the space, you got to go through the emotional presence first before you can feel the nirvana. The nirvana, the peace, the true happiness. You got to go through the emotional presence first. That means whatever emotion is already present, that's what you got to deal with. You got to get out of this content shit. You want to be content staying where you at. But I've done this for 15 years. I've done this for 20 years. Okay, that's nice. You want more though, don't you? You want more. Don't matter how much more you want. If you don't adjust the budget, that more gonna burn out faster than when you get it. It's like when I tell people about coming into your spiritual practices, your higher drive, your higher energy with yourself, you have to do more. So that means whatever you did in the beginning of your spiritual aspects, those are the base levels of your new applications. Those are what you're applying to those shadows. So when you're looking at motherfuckers in the conscious community that have not been applying to their shadows, they have this overpour. So now it's when you got spiritual leaders, you got leaders telling you about the white man, the slave. They got to sell you the same narrative that they're still stuck in, because it creates that's how it creates content. There's motherfuckers content with the white man being racist because it sets the tone for everything that they do with their argument. There's motherfuckers that are content saying it's the black woman's fault or the black man's fault. They are content because it fits their argument, their original argument. So if you stuck in that original argument with yourself, I don't care what you do, everything gonna come out distorted based on that argument. It's like looking at Dr. Umar Johnson. Nigga has some great ideas. I've listened to some of this nigga's great ideas, but because he's living in that bias, nothing will ever go to a certain point. He will only be able to go to a certain point. You keep going through these same points. We need to build this. If we build schools, as an example, if we build schools, who are going to be the teachers inside of those schools? The structure of the school that you would build. The structure of the school. And you think about the structure of a school, guidance counselors, administrators, who gonna do all these positions? What is their mental scape if we're going to be moving a narrative and changing a narrative and really creating a plan? If we're really going to be creating a plan and changing this narrative, who's going to be doing that aspect? Since we're doing this, and we're creating a whole new place, we're going to need security. Who's going to run the security? One thing that I can look at when I look at my man Derek Grace too, Derek Grace on Instagram, and everything that he's doing, from everything from the in-home board game to everything, that is like listening to that. I'm like, nigga, that's it. That's it. You got to set that tone. He set an example and moved forward with it. When I listen to Brother Ben X, 19 keys. 19 keys. Brother Ben X. Brother Ben X talks about digital real estate or your social media, your social imprint. 19 keys. Jake Taylor. They talking about find the family banking narrative and all these narratives. I listen to those things. I listen to that aspect. I bring it into my space. I remove my biases. And I'm like, wait, we've been had family banks. You had a whole family banking system already in play. You've already had whole life insurance policies in play. That's what the karmic debt is. That's what your karmic family debt is. That's the housing of that, the trust. So until you even deal with that aspect, you're even bringing it into that space. That's why you have motherfuckers sitting there talking about, yo, we separated and shit. I can't do shit with my family and da-da-da-da-da. Who said you're supposed to do something with your family? Those are your lessons. That's your karmic. Those are your lessons. If you look at it, if you look at anything else other than as a lesson, you'll always be disappointed. Every fucking time. When you stop looking at things when you start looking at things based on as a lesson, as not as a lesson, you're thinking about exposure. You're thinking about what they came from. You'll always see them to fit that argument or in your mind. So you'll always look at a nigga and be like, oh, that nigga on the weekends, that nigga snort cocaine and bang out prostitutes. It ain't got nothing to do with the fuck the messenger look like. What is the message that you received? All the other stuff that you saw, those were lessons that needed to trigger your emotions so you could embrace what the hell was being taught to you. That's why it came to you that way. That's why it came to you in that rawness. Because it's teaching you to be authentic. I can be authentic in my sense of myself because I'm working on those aspects. You're always working on these aspects to take yourself to the next level. Everything that tests you. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you creating? What is the basis? What is your emotional aspect? What are you doing inside of your space? Anything that makes you feel failure, doubt, insecurity, lean into it. Anything that makes you feel guilty, insecure, jealous, lean into it. Anything that make you feel anything about yourself, lean into it. Let it burn. Let it hit. Let it sizzle in your spirit. Let it hit you a little bit. Change everything about yourself. I'm coming from a space where I was homeless twice. Because the old narrative for me was, man, as long as I'm making this money, I'm good. But when the money went away, I ain't had no plan. I just had patterns. All my patterns would be exposed. All my habits would be exposed. I had expensive habits. To that narrative where I was at, I had expensive habits. I got this habit I got to keep going. I got to be happy. I got to be this. I got to be this. So basically, I'm sitting in that space and I'm like, I seduced myself to manipulate everything that's going on around me. I can't get out of it. I got to sit in this. I got to understand this shit. That's why it keep happening. I'm not at peace. I'm not happy. These are the narratives that I was telling myself. I'm truly not at peace. I'm not happy. Because the first thing that I was doing was like, I'm in gratitude and I'm light and I'm light and I'm love. All I'm basically trying to do in that sense was I'm trying to preserve what I had. I'm trying to preserve what I had. So when those spiritual tests came through that forced me to make decisions that would take me further out of my comfort zone of being used to being seen as a certain way, to act a certain way, to react a certain way, shit fucked up my humanity, fucked up the moral compass. But it needed to do that. See, this sacred energy exchange, your communication with yourself is going to be your key. Exactly. You sitting there, you literally trying to dull your senses. Oh man. But I mean, it worked one time back in 92 or back one time back in 2004 when I was doing this. You ain't there no more. And until you deal with that aspect, everything based on that space where you were at is going to come up. That's the entice. That's the enticing. That's the glamour. That's the fact. When we talk about glamours, you talk about infatuation. You talk about the glamours, the infatuations, the things, the quickies that help you react to the moment and not live in the moment to exist. Man, when I was back in 1992, I had oh, okay, cool. That's why you got niggas right now that are in their 60s still in the mindset of when they were 18, 19. Because the only reason they can keep going back to the 18, 19 adolescent aspect of comprehension is because their original the 18-year-old communications of communicating and living and existing like an 18-year-old is because their emotional intelligence is still back there when they first did it. That first gunshot. That first time they were exposed to some shit. So they've been living in that exposure. Remember, there's that difference between that exposure and that vulnerability. See, when you sit in your exposures, you can now become vulnerable. When you can sit in those spaces that you left exposed, that fear of being exposed, you got to go beyond that point because that exposure is infatuation. Vulnerability is the allure. Vulnerability is the plan. Vulnerability is the purpose. Vulnerability is the potential to be able to see multiple streams and not just one. Trying to make everything fit through this one door. I want to make everything fit through here because if it don't fit through here, then it don't fit my argument. Then I'm worthless. I'm failing in my life. I'm failing everybody else. No, you're not. You fail yourself every time you want to react that way because you don't want to sit down. That's why this weekend I dropped that special. $60, 45 minutes. Yes, you go in them, allow yourself to go into the emotional breakdown. You got to allow yourself to go into the emotional breakdown. One of the biggest things that I do is I create the space for you to go into that emotional breakdown. That's what you going into that therapy for. Like when you going into that session with me, you have to go into the emotional breakdown, the tears, the snot bubbles, the tears, the anger, everything. You got to feel it. You got to feel it. And once you're feeling it, now you can actually start to say, why are you feeling it? See, that emotional breakdown, that's what it's the catalyst of the chaos before you can organize and order it. I was angry for fucking years, but I didn't go to the basis of why I was angry. I was angry because I had abandonment issues. I was angry because I had neglect wounds present. I was angry because in a past life, I did this. In the past life, I was the one that did what happened to me, or I did the emotional equivalent to what happened to me. So I had to sit in it and really define that shit. Really sitting like, nigga, damn, man, I've been doing that shit. I've been doing that shit for about 26 years, 36 years, man. I've been doing this shit 34 years. Because I'm going to put it like this. That job, that car, that house, those kids, the friend, that don't make you an adult. Exactly. That's you telling your shadow is going, your shadow based on the separation process, your shadow being at the base, it's always going to hit you with some shit that's going to make you feel even weaker. It's going to make you feel worse. Man, you weak as shit. Accept it. Say yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exact. Whoo. That's exact. Like once you go through that break, once we go through these breaks, it changes the narrative of everything. Because once you've been through the break, not just in the physical aptitude, I'm talking about in the emotional sense and internal. That means whatever's happening to you, you must allow it to happen. This is why I tell people about karmic debt with certain people. When I dropped the thing about my grandmother told me, my grandmother was like, why are you picking up everybody else's chores? That's not your chore to bear. That's not your chore. You have a purpose in that space. That's not your chore. Anything that's based on relevance, are you trying to stay relevant? That is not your chore. You're based in there on presence. Because you'll start noticing in your conversations will even change. Your conversations are going to go in the external sense. I remember when I first started saying the we aspect, when I really started saying we as in together, and I started reflecting from the we. I stopped reflecting from the multiple eyes, and I started reflecting from the we. I stopped reflecting from the eyes and started reflecting from the we. That means we were in unison. So everything that you do, everything that I do is based on the concept of we. Naturally. No bias. See, when you living in them eyes, that I has an argument. I've talked about that book multiple times. The book by Samuel N. Weor, The Revolutionary Psychology, and he breaks down the eyes. You keep living in these eyes. I need to do this, and I need to do that, and I need to do that. Each one of them live in that bipartisan or in tandem with a different creator aspect within inside of your shadow. That's how they exist. That's your basis. So you create based on that. So now you keep procreating this reason to exist in the obstacle. The obstacle, i.e., becomes the debt. The debt, i.e., becomes another variation. So now you celebrate your obstacles. What is an obstacle to the human narrative? An obstacle to the human narrative is, ooh, it's Christmas time coming up. I got to get my kids some Christmas gifts. I got to get everybody gifts. That's an obstacle, i.e., it creates a debt. Opportunity. It's not about ignoring it. Man, I don't celebrate no white man holiday. It's not about ignoring it. It's about learning how to use it. That's transmutation. So that means now Christmas come around, gift cards. Give motherfuckers gift cards to bookstores. I put the energy into that card, unbiased. Here's a gift card to whatever. Do whatever you're gonna do with it. That way you're removing yourself from that narrative that you keep getting stuck in and creating a reason to live there. Because the longer that you live inside of that space, the more you create inside of that space. The more you keep, ooh, it's white people shit or it's black people shit, the more you live separated away from yourself. White people go to therapy. White people go to rehab. White people go to think about what the fuck you created. When I was doing the baseline research for the beginning, because if y'all go back to previous, I talked about the book club, the secret society. When I thought about that, I was like, nigga, I can go deeper. See, the thing about your best, and I watched this in the 85 South show. The thing, Clayton English said this on the 85 South show. Earth Gang was on there. Your best is not good enough. From the traumatic space, your best is your best. Once you reach your best or your apex, based on your human narrative, that means the best thing that you've ever created, you're going to try to create that over and over and over again. Same, different variations, same meaning. That's what you do from a traumatic space. That's what you do from the hurt space, from the heart space. Everything from your heart path be the same thing. That's in a strange fruit. You just keep growing different strange variations. But when you're really thinking about your best, it's becoming better. That's when you start to maximize and realize that you are limitless. You start looking at the different streams. So now you manifest. Now you're looking at the different streams in order for you to manifest what you want truly, based on the authenticity of you. You start to accept this is gratitude. I'm in gratitude when I wake up because I have the opportunity to learn some shit. Whatever I need to do next, I'm about to do. I'm going to do. It is not based on, and you're taking it away from the basis of trying to stay relevant. See, the thing that got me a lot of times got me stuck, like I've talked about it before. I remember being at every one of my jobs I worked at for like 5 years. Every job, 5 years was done. After about the fourth year, I'm going through the motions. because I was stuck in this state. I was stuck in a state of relevance. I was creating base. I needed that space to create something. It was fitting. It fit my argument. If the money went down, now I can be frustrated again. When the money went up, I'm still frustrated. Don't matter. Because I need to stay frustrated to make the money. I need to stay within this argument of being this real nigga to keep making the money. I got to stay in this aptitude of being a real nigga to keep getting in these types of relationships. So I keep attracting based on that breaking point. So when things came into my point that were based on emotional abuse of my mindscape, financial abuse, it was only reflections of my own financial abuse, the own beat up narrative that the own substructure of the way I was beating myself up or putting my hands on myself or destroying myself, keeping myself in a certain space. So naturally, what would come into my space? Everything comes into your space based on what you've already planted. So think about those seeds you planted in the adolescent mindset, the adolescent identities. Think about what you created back there. That's what comes up. And until you deal with that, that's why I talk about that void. Until you deal with that, you're going to make more of it. Until you adjust that budget, attach to that frequency, get to that point, you don't keep creating more of it. You don't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. I feel like this is happening. It always happens around the same time, don't it? You've ever noticed, and you really sit down with yourself and you think about your pattern of how you live in your life, you exist in your identity. You notice the same things come up around the same time every time. If it's not the same, I'm not talking about like the same exact point physically that happens. I'm talking about the same emotions get spiked around the same time every single time. And based on your manipulation of the space, this is when we outwardly try to make bring people down, or we try to shoot at people, try to hurt people's feelings, and then we get stuck in our zodiacs. But like, well, you read my zodiac, I ain't supposed, nigga, this is who I am. And then because you built a new basis based on survival, you just made that your new base. So now you're looking at, I'm conscious and I'm awake and I'm aware and the da-da-da-da-da. You still thinking it's the masculine energy that leads. It's the feminine energy that guides. So when you stuck in the man or the woman aspect, you thinking that the man leads. So now you think the man provide, protect, and all of these aspects, but you got to look at it from the basis of the feminine or the masculine energy. What seat do you need to be sitting in? Some of y'all need to sit in that seat where shorty is the one making the bag. Some of y'all women, y'all need to sit in the seat where you are the one making the bag, so you can understand that space of your masculine concepts, of your feminine energy, your emotional aspect, to see it in reflection through the masculine aspect. That's why you came down here in the first place. That's why you were separated in the first place. You came down here in the masculine seat. You came down here to understand the feminine. You came down here in the feminine seat. You came down here to understand the masculine. But remember, everything comes down here based on duality. Everything comes down here based on the durations of the duality. As long as you stay stuck inside of that space with yourself. That's why the infatuation feels so good. But the allure wears off. That's why you will give your all in physical aptitude based on emotional relevance. I remember being in so many spaces with myself and I'm giving my all, but then when I sit back and I really take accountability, I was only giving my all from a sense of emotional relevance. I was only giving it from a sense of emotional relevance. There was very little presence there. Because the only way, exactly. I did not know how to guide my energy. I did not understand my energy, my emotional flow, my ebb. I didn't understand that tone with myself in order for me to move in that space. I didn't understand it. So anything that came up, because I had a lack of understanding guidance, of course, anything that came into my space earlier on, thinking about the aspects of the my pop saying things to me and it making me sit in my emotions and feel fear and all these things. And then that built that argument in myself, like, ain't no one gonna talk to me that way. I'm gonna do it my way. So I got stuck in that. That was my first I. So I created that I. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it by all means. I don't give a. Basically, I'm just saying that. Basically, I've talked about that earlier on when I talked about the first one of the third lecture that I ever did. The first time when I had a channel with Bernie Mac and I said, "Fuck them kids," because I said in the basis of reality to it that if you are not doing it internal to the internal dialogue to your assessing and taking accountability for this internal dialogue of self, that's naturally what you're doing inside any other space anyway. And then you can put whatever you want on top of it and be like, it's because of this and this and you and you. No one is in charge of my emotions. No one is in charge of managing my emotions. So when we think about the benefit account, the benefits, I remember talking about this before. 9 times, most relationships based in the survival complex are based on benefits. They are account holders. When we think about the placeholder, they're account holders. So they hold a certain queue to a certain level of access to my account. Remember that argument I was talking about earlier? That 90% of the argument? 90% of what you put into the space for them to fit that argument. The negative and the positives of that argument. So if they don't match certain points of the argument and it make you feel good, now you expose yourself some more. But every time something negative comes back, that's why you take 1 step forward, 4 steps back, and you revert based on what happened, because now you got to go back to this is what you're doing mentally inside of your mind in that program and that automatic thought. They did something here that you didn't like, or it hurt your feelings, it triggered you. Now, in order for that to exist, even if this person changes, evolves, changes, accepts it to the level with themselves, you haven't accepted your narratives back here. So all of these narratives are now magnified through that one point. Just like when the other person comes into the space, you only gonna meet people as deep as you met yourself. So when you feel like a lot of distortion, arguments, all of these aspects, and you start dealing with people, when you really start body language, dealing with people, talking to people, dealing with people on that narrative of their humanity with themselves, you start to realize, why am I upset? Why am I mad? Why am I feeling this way? It's nothing that they're doing, because they're only there to exist as the conduit for it to react, for the reaction. So once you remove, if you closed your eyes and looked at them and was in the dark, you don't see anything. That's why most motherfuckers don't have sex in the dark. Because you want to be blind to your emotions. You want to be blind to your insecurities. Remember, it all comes out in the physical form anyway. So now you think about your insecurities from an emotional aspect, deep internal from an argument became a physical aspect. So now you think about every narrative that's been created and the variations to that. So now you got Lizzo, you got Cardi B, you got Nicki Minaj, which Nicki Minaj was around predators, was from a predator concept. So now she's breeding. There's 3 levels to breed a predator. Either you breed them to protect you, breed them to protect your predators, or you breed them for the predators. So now you start looking at these different narratives. A lot of you from a traumatic experience, especially with like the baby father, baby mother aspects, or from that abusive tone, or even from sexual traumas from earlier on in your life, you're creating prey. You're creating prey because you're still in the prey position. You got to go. This is why I talk about that argument is deeper than just saying, ooh, yeah, this happened to me and I owned it. Do you comprehend what happened to you? Do you comprehend what happened to you? Do you understand the emotions that are coming up into that space? It's not about me going to the space and saying, okay, I dealt with this. It's about me being open it's about me being open to deal with that. Simply being open up to be honest, to deal with that. Because it's going to keep coming up until it's fully dealt with. That's why when I'm like, damn, man, I thought I dealt with that aspect of myself. Why it come back up? Apparently I didn't deal with it. Apparently it's something still there. Apparently there's still apparently now I'm shifting between observation and experience. I've experienced it. I've sat with it. I've dealt with it. Oh, now this is an observation. Now I'm switching this DNA. I've talked about this DNA sequencing before. Now I'm turning this DNA off and I'm turning this DNA on. This was considered junk or my shadow or my darkness. So I only comprehended it as junk. Anything junk you think automatically bad. So you put everything negative or everything bad into junk. So if I put everything into the junk slot, this junk file, the trash folder, now I look into my space and why am I not emptying this junk folder? Now I look into my space in physical representation. Why am I not doing this inside of my space? Because it only reflects the junk folder. Why do I keep holding things in? Why do I let things build up before I release them? Because I still got that junk folder. Everything is still on that. I still got that part on my hard drive. But I bought a new hard drive. I bought a new USB. I bought a new USB. I expanded the space. I got a bigger house. I got a nicer car. I got a better paying job. Don't matter. None of that shit matters until you deal with what needs to be dealt with. Until you deal with what needs to be dealt with, none of that shit's going to matter. It's only going to be reflective of what you have not dealt with. It's the unresolved that creates your space until you integrate. It's the unresolved that you keep making love to. You feel like you're getting fucked over in your life. It's the unresolved that's fucking you. You're not getting intimate with what the fuck you have not resolved. You're not resolving that contract. So of course in the lower sense of the physical aspect, you're gonna need that you're gonna need that lower level, you're gonna need that affection. You're gonna need this you have an entitlement. Remember, I've said that last week. You're deserving, but you're not entitled. See, that entitlement, that's based on that junk. That's based on the unresolved. You're entitled because you went through some shit. No, you're not. Just because you went through it don't mean you deserve. Of course you deserve better. Of course you deserve happiness, peace. Of course you deserve these aspects, but you're not entitled to them. Those entitlements become the obsessions, the addictions, the debts. There can be fragments of trauma. I had a fragment of trauma come up from when I was 6. I had a fragment of trauma come up from when I was like 6 years old, a few days ago. Shit came up. I felt it. I sat with it. But the key was I've learned how to assess, reflect, sit with it. So when it does come up, now I can just catch it, hold it, get familiar with it. This isn't me anymore. Blow that shit away. But you got to get to that point. It's not the point of, oh my God, I've dealt with, because I'm going to give you the whole game. Your shadow work is never done. Your shadow work goes from learning your light, bringing yourself into your darkness, and now transmuting. I'm in the transmutation process. That's an intimate, transmutation is the intimacy. That's the high, that's when you come into that high drive with yourself, that high drive, that high level of communication, that high level of comprehension. That means whatever's being said to you, you simplify it into, oh, that's emotion. Instead of you, Because now in this ability, now in the physical sense, I can leave things where they're at and move forward. Instead of me sitting like, oh my God, but this happened to me back in 1996 in 2003 and I still ain't dealt with it. How do I deal with it? Go sit down with somebody. Once you understand that everything is an opportunity, you start reassessing how you've been reacting to things. That one conversation that you have with this one person every single time something bad happened, but they give you an answer that makes you feel good about yourself. But what about the person that you go to and they look at you and be like, yeah. Sound like you got some avoidance issues. What's the first thing that you say? Man, you avoid this shit too. You right. But simply for the fact that I can sit here and accept what you just said shows me that it gives you the example that I've been working on those aspects of myself. See, it's all about the aspects. I don't want anything around me that's based on where I was. I desire nothing to be around me that's based on where I was. I need everything to be based on where we're going. Because I'm in a we mindset. I'm no longer in an I mindset. I'm no longer in this I mindset. And that's one of the things I've been working over for the last year. That's actually one of my newest things I've been working over the last year. And that's why the information that y'all been getting and getting hit with that I give out every week, lessons and everything, is based on a we mentality. It's more impartial, there's less bias. Because I know I needed to go through those steps. It's all about accepting the steps that you need to go through. There's no jumping ahead because everything that's in your shadow comes with you. So would you rather, simplest thing I always tell people, like, would you rather deal with it now or would you rather deal with it 4 years from now? Would you rather deal with it now while it's present or would you rather wait like you've been doing? And it gets stuck in the emotional aspects of age. I'm 60 and I just realized that my entire life was a lie. Now that you realized it, now that you're present with it, what do you want to do next? That's your decision. That's your decision. Man, but I'm about to lose. I'm going to lose. Have some, have not. Have some, have not. What you want to do? Like, I'm very big on this aspect of there's no excuse. You're in the position that you are in for a reason. What are you learning inside of this position? You got to go. Remember, reaction is comfort. So it's easy. It was easy for me to sit there. Use an example. It was easy for me to be sitting in my first apartment here with no lights on and waiting for my unemployment and all this other shit and really sitting in that space. It was easy for me to go look for things based on reaction. That means go look for this, this, and this. But at the end of the fucking day, I needed to sit inside of that space. I needed to see exactly what I was attached to. No electricity means I can't charge my phone. That means I'm running down to my car to go sit in my car and plug my phone into the charger. I got a couple of dollars. I'm going to go get something to eat. The only reason I wanted to get something to eat is because usually around that time, I go get something to eat. I was living the old argument. Around this time, I go get something to eat. So if I don't get something to eat, then who am I? A nigga that's not supposed to be eating right now. A nigga that's supposed to be focused on some internal shit. And then I would learn it. Then my dumb ass, because you still shedding, tests come through. I would pass the test or fail the test. It wasn't about passing or failing it. It was the lesson that I learned from the test. How did I move forward? How did I allow my... Oh, that was part of the lesson. See, as you shifting through these aspects, that's all a part of that lesson. Like, you are changing. You want peace? You don't get peace. You get the aptitude to learn peace. You don't get patience. You get the aptitude to learn patience. So when we think about these manifestations in our lives, you think about manifesting. Ooh, I want some. You think about this lower level stuff just to get yourself by to the next moment. But now the emotions that were based in that got to stay there anyway. So you never integrate. So now you go 4, 5, 6, 7 years into your future. Now you got the bag and you got all this different stuff going on, but you ain't learned anything. And then you sitting there like, now, since you ain't learned anything, you have information, but you have not applied it. Therefore, you've not integrated. Now, in order for, it's like, give an example. I had a very big acceptance complex based on emotional relevance. I needed to be accepted. So when I first came into my awareness and my consciousness, when I got information, I would automatically go to the places to where I would be unconsciously superior based on conflict. Because in order for me to apply, I need conflict. Unconsciously, you need chaos. So now I would go and tell sisters, brothers, cousins, family members, and certain people about certain things. But because I did not yet apply it, it was based on relevance. I felt good because I got the information. Since I did not apply it, I cannot simplify it. So it sounded extra foreign to them. And now it fed my argument. It fed my argument. Niggas don't understand me. Motherfuckers don't accept me. Motherfuckers don't love me. Motherfuckers don't support me. See how it fit the narrative? It fit my narrative. Until I started like, wait, why do I care so much? Why do I care about how they feel so much? Now, what would come up? Because if they don't feel me, the guilt come up. So now I got to sit in that. I've talked about this before. I had to sit in that guilt. I had to sit in that insecurity. I had to sit in the bed that I made. I had to sit in that red room. I had to sit under that red light because I had to realize I was living inside of my root chakra. So I had to do that root chakra work. I had to do the root chakra work. So now when I became confident in what I was rooted in as applying, and now I'm getting into that confidence center, getting into that sacral area, that's where I operate from as a manifested generator. That's my motor based on feeling. Now I had to remove the biases because it was imbalanced. So now I go into the solar plexus, how I empower in that space. Now I go to the path of the heart, all the residues on top of the heart, all of the doubts, the shames, all of the secrets, all of the aspects that I haven't dealt with yet. That has to come to the surface. Now I got to work on that. Now I got to, and it's not you're working on these joints separately. You're working on these things in tandem. Because there's shit that's on your heart that's connected directly to your root. There's going to be shit that's coming off. There's shit that you getting off your chest through your throat chakra that's connected to the original way to how you created things and saw things. Your crowning achievements. Why you stayed in that position. Your crown was your crowning achievement from building from the ground up from the trauma was trying to be the best employee ever. And the employee is, i.e., the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the mother, the husband, the wife, the best friend, the sister, the brother, the aunt, the uncle, the whatever employee handbook that you got to remember. What employee handbook did you get that information from? Because that's in your shadow. You learn how to be, I learned how to become the best uncle by looking at my worst uncles. So as long as I wasn't doing what they were doing, I was the best uncle. But because I didn't understand why they did what they were doing based on the emotional points, I was still doing an emotional equivalent to the relevance of what they were doing. Their addictions, their way that they dealt with their urges, the way that they did the shit that they did, I was doing the same exact shit. So I was just carrying, oh, I'm gonna take that. Oh, that's the life insurance policy? That's the life insurance policy? So I can write off. So you mean I can take a loan out on that policy? All right, cool. I'm gonna take a loan out on that policy. I don't understand the terms of the policy. Write out the loan. Highest interest rate. You now go 4 or 5 years into your present. And like, God damn, I've been doing that the entire time. Because you still living in that old contract. You're still living out that old contract with yourself. Exactly. Parents, everything. You living out that old contract. It's okay. But if you know you want more, if you know you desire more with yourself, you know you're in a higher sense of desire with yourself, what are you doing from this point? I promise it's gonna be some shit that you ain't gonna like. It needs to be. It's gonna be some shit that it's gonna be some decisions that you made and owning your decisions because you've been making it. I'll put it like this: you've been making the same decisions over and over and over and over again through different relevant points. Yep. Same decision. I remember I've been making the same decisions and didn't own the decision. That's ultimately what it boiled down to. I wasn't owning the decision. So if I don't own the decision, that means I don't get the lesson. So if I don't get the lesson, then it's going to repeat. And it becomes my physical attachment, that communication, no comprehension means obstructed view or an obstructive aspect of creation. So I just kept doing the same thing over and over again. Never in peace, never happy, always frustrated. So now we think about sexual frustration. I'm thinking it's a challenge. I got to go harder in that space and show my best in a physical sense in order to get what I want. So I'm using manipulation. So now, since I'm using manipulation, here's the mask. I'm under this mask of manipulation based on guilt, doubt, and frustration. So now everything that comes through this space, that's what I'm seeing it as. See, when you become relevant, this is most of the relevance of the exposure is taking the mask like this, but leaving the straps behind your ears. You got the mask like this. I'm open and I'm exposing myself so I can breathe a little bit. But the mask is still here. So everything now comes through this mask. If I take this mask off and I become vulnerable to myself and I look at the mask, I can see when things are being projected through the mask and I can see when things are being directly towards me. So this is when we come into the aspects of that direct current, that direct flow with yourself. A lot of us are not. I remember I had a whole fucking problem with motherfuckers being direct with me. It didn't matter. It didn't matter so much what they were being direct about. It was just the simple fact the motherfucker had the audacity to be direct with me and make me feel some type of way. That's how I would think. Like, you want to make me mad. You want to make me feel guilty. You want to make me feel doubt. You want to make me do all the. There was things that I was already used to doing anyway. It was now being shown to me, nigga, this is what you've been doing the entire time. That's how you reacted. That's how you responded. That's how you stayed out of your, that's how you avoided rejection. That's how you avoided abandonment. That's how you avoided separation. That's how you avoided insecurities. That's how you avoided jealousy. That's how you avoided it, by listening to, by going based on the reaction. As long as somebody reacted to you, you're like, yep, that's the one. And you just played your game. You seduced them to play your game. They were seducing, they were manipulating, they were the manipulative point, you were the seductive point, and you just kept switching these points back and forth until the infatuation wore off. And now you really got to do some real work. And that work is only based on the depth with yourself. And now you like, but what about this, and this, and this should have happened here. No matter when the fuck you think it should have happened, it's happening now. Because the only thing that matters is now. Only thing that matters is now, and the accountability of the now. Once you accept the accountability within the now, the responsibilities within the now point, that's when you actually can start doing some things. Because now all those emotions, that the only thing that stops people from coming to the now is the uprooting of those emotions. Oh, I'm upset. Now you thinking about, now instead of thinking about qualities, you thinking about stipulations. You thinking about being accepted based on your old narrative of the argument. The argument that you've been telling yourself now has been exposed. That argument that you've been living out, that's what happens after the infatuation's over. Now the argument's exposed. Based on who you deal with. That's what they're attacking. In this aspect of refracting. That's what you're attacking, your argument. You're not being attacked. It's your argument. I don't know how many arguments I had locked in until I realized that they were only attacking my argument. They never were attacking me because I was not present. That's why I would go back and forth in not really giving a fuck or saying that I care. Not this. I could explain why I cared. I could explain what I cared through a biased point. But that bias point required me to say I. See, I think about your conversations. Comprehension of your conversations. A lot of times you say, I did this and I did that, and I do this and I do that. You keep saying those I's because those I's fit the I of your argument. I do this because I said I was independent. I do this because I said I was a real nigga. I did this because I said I was a real bitch. I did this because I've been hurt before. I did this because I don't want to be nothing like my mom. I did this because I want to be nothing like my pops. I still try to prove something to them, even though they weren't there. I did this because they said all this negative shit about me and my pop said I was fat. I did this because my sisters did this. And that's the arguments that you living out. So anybody that come into your space that, what? You don't see me for this? No. Because it's a different depth. So now you want to connect. Now you want to go all the way back to what I talk about. Now you want to stay attached to it. I feel like I'm the best thing on the planet. But during that time, did you learn? During that time, did you learn anything? What lessons, what did you pick up and learn? Every time you come to the table, it's going to be like, what did you learn? What did you learn about your happiness? That my happiness is not in this. Okay, cool. My happiness is not external. My peace is not external. The love my love and the way that I radiate and use my love in that aspect is not external. It's reflected from how I assess into the space from a higher point, from the higher point. Yep, the eye is the mask of the persona. You have multiple eyes. Those eyes are the multiple mask of personas. The one good book. I'm gonna go get the book real quick. All right, we have returned. Two of the greatest books. Two of my greatest books. One of this book right here. I always tell this book, Revolutionary Psychology. Revolutionary Psychology by Samuel N. Weaver. The practical spirituality that awakens consciousness. I actually went to it. Where is it? Here it is. Actually, this is the chapter I was reading the other day. Chapter 30, page 185. Feel like Bobby Hemmett. The permanent center of gravity. It is impossible to have continuity of purpose without a true individuality. Therefore, if the psychological individual does not exist, if many personas live within each one of us, there is no responsible person within it. It would be an absurdity to demand continuity of purpose from someone. See how that works? See, until you deal with the eyes, it's impossible. It's why? How can you demand anything from anybody else until you have not yet done to yourself? Until you have dealt with yourself, you can't demand shit. You're only going to be in this sense of entitlement or demanding things from others for the lack of it, for the lack of understanding within inside of yourself. Yeah. We cannot take seriously what any particular eye affirms at any given moment because of the concrete fact that any other eye can affirm exactly the opposite at that moment. What is critical of all this subject matter is that many people believe they possess a sense of moral responsibility, yet they deceive themselves when affirming that they always are the same. There are people who are not. Yeah, there are people who, at some moment in their existence, come to Gnostic studies. They glow through the force of their enthusiasm. They come devoted to esoteric work and even swear to consecrate the whole of their existence to these matters. Unquestionably, all the brothers and sisters of our moment even admire such enthusiasts, the enthusiastic one. One cannot but feel happiness in listening to these kinds of people so devoted to definitely defiant and definitely sincere. However, does not last very long. Any given day, due to this or that reason, just or unjust, simple, complex, the person withdraws from the gnosis, and the person and abandons their work. Another good book that uses a reference point. The Gnostic Education. Learn how to think and not what to think. When I read this book from cover to cover, when I read this book and started breaking down and simplifying this book, and when I really read this book, when this book came available to my mind aspect, and I was like, oh shit, nigga, that's the conscious leaders. That's what you keep going into your space. Content. Most people, based on your eyes, based on this aspect, you're searching for content. Content is not simplicity. Content is not simplicity. Simplicity is the aspects of you understand being able to break things down in true vulnerability. Simplicity is me simply being vulnerable. No matter what it is, the emotions that come up, I can simply display. Just me being able to be able to display my emotional intelligence of where it is at, in the aptitude of understanding that, yo, if 7 people tell me that I'm an asshole, 7 people tell me that I'm this or this and that, they're telling me something about myself that I need to understand. Whether it's 1 or 1,000,000. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Every one of those thought forms, everyone, like, as you sit there in a space, you having whole conversations. You have a whole conversation And then you don't remember parts of the conversation because you weren't the person that had that conversation. And this is like when we talk about the compartmental, when people compartmentalize their lives. Are you a functioning addict? You're a functioning addict to pain. So now you compartmentalize your life to different levels of pain. So at work, you think at work, your job, you think that you think that it's supposed to be hard. Why? Because on the other end of that spectrum, it makes something else very fucking easy. It's the thing that your mother did, your father did, your grandparents did. They did all of this hard work in this space. Behind all that, they hit all of the emotion. But then they brought you Christmas. They brought you Thanksgiving. They brought you Sunday dinner. They gave you this space. This mentality created these variations of the multiple eyes that live in the space now. That's your existence inside of your space. The survival wound being that deep within yourself, within your personal path. It's the multiple personalities of the ego, or the multiple ids, the multiple IDs, or the multiple personalities. Yep. The multiple personalities are the multiple ids. You got somebody that does shit when you angry. You got a motherfucker in you does something when you sad. You got a motherfucker in you. You might have the same part. This is the aspects of you identifying. This is why it's important always to identify the shadows. See, motherfuckers, when people thought about shadow work, it was, ooh, let's get into the darkness. You got multitudes of demons, Damians, or intelligences that you have not yet understood yet. When I tell people I'm present, I'm in the shadow. I'm present. I know them motherfuckers. I know where they came from. I know they all have a different story. They're all from different factions. And all of those factions are all around the examples of the world. Having my shit, only like, I would say probably only a fraction of my shit is in the aspects of when people say, you got to go back to Africa. Because most of my shit is in islands and in Asia. That was the stream of what I decided to come through. And going through those depths, as you start going through these depths and start integrating with your energy, everything that you come in contact with is an aspect of you. But you got to understand that you're looking at a base. This is when we start learning discernment. Discernment is the ability to go from, am I infatuated with it? Or is it really having an alluring effect on me? See, that alluring effect, it hurt, it burned. It's like, that's the ethers. It burned really, really slow. Burn slow. It makes its way down. See, that infatuation of this, the infatuation is like the first Iron Man movie when that nigga had the clip and he did the laser thing and cut everybody in half. It was a one-time shot. That's your infatuation. You get some information, you like, yeah, it works, and you use it, and then once the feeling's gone, now you don't know what to do anymore. Once the feeling's gone, because you didn't get intimate with it. See, that intimacy is a whole different level of concept of thought. When you really start understanding it with the aspects of vulnerability. If after you have been intimate, that's why after you've had sex, you have that small little bit of intimacy when you vulnerable and you pillow talk. Mm-hmm. The druids connect to the Pygmies, Ireland. I got the Irish bloodline in that shit, all that shit. All of these aspects is aspects of you exploring yourself and removing layers. Everything that's on top of it, like I'm gonna use a cool example. Everything that got some white man on top of it, that's only the reflection of the behavior. That's the ceremony. Everything that you see inside of your space, you're trying to keep these ceremonies going for yourself. You don't want to do the roots to the ritual, because the ritual simply means to do the work. Your shadow work is an entire ritual. It's not a work, it's a ritual. You can do it, you can do some ceremonial shit based on the foundations of your, but it's only going to be based on the foundation still of your shadow and create some shit, you might get some answers. But did you get what you wanted? Did you get what you needed? You got both. See, when I really started looking at the aspects of things that I was doing and why I was doing them, I really started sitting back and going back to earlier rituals, back to earlier petitions, back to earlier shit that I did. I was like, it was there the entire time. Why didn't I see it the first time? Oh. And then it made me build back up based on presence. See, now that you become emotionally present, that's when your shadow work can actually start. Your shadow work actually starts doing what it's supposed to. You actually start embracing your shadow work because you're actually present. You can't do any of this shit without being present. We get so stuck on doing shit based on relevance, and it works based on relevance because the relevance is based on the emotional aspect that was created under it. This is why they always talk about they need you to be angry, they need you to be upset, they need you to be distracted, they need you to feel something emotionally. They need you to be emotionally relevant, so their presence does not exist. Their presence only exists because you're still trying to be relevant. You still trying to be a black man in America. Yeah, that shit gonna burn. It's like, ooh, that's where it is. Ooh. It makes you, it takes you out, it makes you sit down. Like, I'll give an example. When I first ordered this book, I ordered like $300 some odd worth of books. I just, like, the spirit was like, yo, I was sitting there in the Amazon cart and it's like click, 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 click. Before I knew that shit was at $333. Oh, that taxes and everything. $333 was in the cart. When I really started sitting here with this book and I just started reading it, I'm like, oh. Because that I actually read was this one, the chapter about the essence, chapter 4, the essence, where it breaks down what makes every newborn child beautiful and adorable is his essence. The essence constitutes his true reality. In all creatures, the normal growth of essence is certainly sanctity and it's insufficient. The human body grows and develops in accordance with the biological laws of the species. However, such possibilities in themselves are extremely limited for the essence. Unquestionably, with the help of the essence, can only grow to a small degree. So now you gotta go back. This talks about the first 4 or 5 years of life. These talk about the first 4 or 5 years of your life. We've always talked about the developmental process is between ages 1 and 5. The developmental process starts between 1 and 5. Indoctrination, everything. You're a sponge between 1 and 5. So think about the layer that was put on top of that. But what a lot of us do not get into when we're talking about between ages of 1 and 5, you're not talking about the womb. See, that 1 through 5, that your emotional years up to about 12, 13, to when you come into the teen or the adolescent phase, the identities based on these emotions, guess what? You got to go deeper. Your mother. How were you born? Where were you born? How were you born? What was the climate? What was your mother thinking about? Was your mother in fear? Your mother in doubt? Your mother in regret? Your mother was trying to get a fix? What was your mother doing at that point in time? Where was your pops at in his life? All of those elements are a part of your contract into how you are now going to create the backdrop basically of your life. All of that's there as the backdrop of your life. If I don't want to sit there and deal with it, I'm like, nah, I ain't deal with that, man. Fuck that shit, man. Because everybody don't nobody love me. Okay, cool. You said don't nobody love you. That's your argument. You're gonna create everything based on that argument. You're gonna have every physical aspect based on that argument. Then you don't get to the point where, like, You know what? I'm gonna start retaining my semen. Okay. Do you understand what your semen is? Do you what's the data stored in your nut? That's the reason you're learning semen retention, to pull it to the highest point. The reason you learn celibacy, to cyclate your energy, is not to suppress anything. But as long as you're stuck in them eyes, those eyes need to keep reproducing. One thing that I thought about was to not shut down any part of myself and going to the extremes. And that's was being able to be in a just being able to sit in any space and be openly honest. They need to eat, they need to feed. Me to be openly honest in any space. To be able to, okay, let me sit here and say it and allow what needs to be me saying it without bias. Me saying it without the doubt, without the guilt, without insecurity, without this inherent need to apologize for the action. Me owning it was the only way that I can apologize for the action. See, you got it even when it comes to your actions, when you're apologizing for your actions, are you simply apologizing to go back to a reset point, or are you really apologizing to change that narrative of behavior? That's one of the hardest things about an apology with myself. Because after I said this, okay, I'm going forward. I remember being aspect, I'd be mad for fucking days and waste days of time. Why? Until I realized that I wasn't even mad at what happened. I wasn't even mad at. What happened, I wasn't even upset with. It was something else. I had to remember, I talked about these layers of reaction. I had to remove them layers of reaction to get to the real point and what it was coming out as. I felt like I failed. I felt like I wasn't shit. I felt powerless. I felt estranged. I felt this feeling. And the longer that I didn't want to deal with that feeling, everything in my space had to feel it. Because this is how I remain real. This is how nobody played me. This is how nobody can talk shit about me. This is how nobody can hurt me. Because I didn't deal with the original hurt. I didn't deal with that original point. It's all in that shutting. Shit, fuck your whole... It's supposed to. I remember when I thought, I was like, okay, cool. Because that's why most motherfuckers think you going back to some shit. We want our planet back. As long as we get rid of the white people, everything go back to normal. It's in your mind. It's all in your mind. Why niggas keep hurting me? It's in your mind. Why these bitches keep hurting me? It's in your mind. Something you ain't dealt with yet. Because once I started dealing with a lot of those things started disappearing. And this is that we don't say white people just disappeared. To even see a white person now is kind of weird sometimes. I'm like, that's why I always post them videos with like white people like cooking and doing weird shit. Like the lady was cleaning the chicken with fucking Dawn with dish soap, the dish soap shit. I was like, is this really this is really who y'all are mad at and sinister? Is it gonna stop you? Bitch is cooking fucking, bitch about to kill niggas with Dawn encrusted chicken. That's who y'all really mad at? You really start laughing at this shit with yourself. Like, really? Because you really getting intimate with yourself. But you got to go through this. You got to go through that work. Promise you. Shit change everything. Shit change everything. You stop reacting to things. Like, I don't react anymore. I respond. I listen more. My Comprehension is different. I want to understand. I want to see things below a certain point. I'm not stuck on surface level things anymore. It's like, so I was like, the surface is going to change regardless anyway. So I'm not concentrating on the surface anymore. I'm like, because it really don't matter, because that's your comprehension. That's why I tell people, like, when I like, first I was like, all right, this is another job for me. This is another job for me. It wasn't another job. You are creating your life in the most authentic sense. The battle of the conflicts externally is you're creating a life based on your authentic self. So everything that was not based on your authentic self, those are the things that come up first. When I tell people about dealing with your shadows and dealing with these aspects, you had a certain glamour up there. That glamour word, motherfuckers was infatuated, so you were used to motherfuckers reacting on infatuation. So when that infatuation wore off, and in the real aspect of the argument come up, now motherfuckers dealing with your argument. You haven't dealt with your argument. So of course you can't deal with somebody else's. You're not supposed to deal with, as long as you have not dealt with your own argument, you always try to deal with other people's arguments. That's the savior. That's you trying to help it. Once I understood it broke down to emotion, everything else became, because once you understand that point, everything else is pretty much fucking easy. You can just do it. You can do it whenever. You can apply something whenever and it work. And it does exactly what it's supposed to do. Because you've removed yourself from the thought of, I need this for this and I need this. No, you removed it. Because until you understand why you're doing it in the first place, what to think is still you shift out of what to think, you go into the how to think paradigm, you realize that you've been avoiding a lot of shit. You realize that your entire definition of your life has been to avoid shit. In the human construct, you feel like you're facing it, but you're not facing it. Let me do it like this. I'm gonna face it like this. So I spent my entire life like this. I spent my entire life like this. I never spent my life doing this. I never spent my life being face to face, eye to eye. I never faced it like that. This changes everything when you start facing things like this, because now you got to look at yourself. See, you can look this way and look at the masculine, blame niggas. Look that way, blame women. Look augmentedly, blame the white man. Look augmentedly, blame white women. Blame some Asians. You can, because the streams of the light, of the frequency of the light, the spectrum on the lower level. Remember the red man, the white man, the brown man, the yellow man, then the pale man, the 5 bodies that you created, 5 senses. Each one is a different sense. So they make you feel certain ways. And you just create it and you look through your spectrums, or you can look directly on and burn your eyes out. Really looking into yourself. Going deep into your aspects of your shadow. And being like, you know what? I do need this time to sit down. I'm avoiding my life. I'm avoiding me. Everything externally is just a reflection of me avoiding myself. So if I'm avoiding myself, I'll react by saying I need to do this first. So I'll make everything else primary and make myself secondary. I'll keep living out the argument I've always been secondary. I'll keep living out the argument that I've always been looked at last. I've always been used. I've always been mistreated. I've always been misunderstood. I just keep using the same narrative. So now if I go into a space, physically, have sex, fuck, have a conversation, that's what I'm going to create. I'm going to create a point for that. Remember, sex is this more than aspects of the physical. Where is your energy at? If you are not assessing your emotional intelligence with yourself, think about what you do when you go into a space but not dealing with your energy. Something will come into your space and overpower or override your shit. That's why a lot of times how it happens. The real nigga come in your life and fuck your brains out. The real bitch come in your life and do shit you ain't never had before. And now you attach to it because it fits your original narrative. I remember I had to look at my first argument. First argument, one of the arguments in particular was how I lost my virginity. It was to an older chick. She had something to offer. I had emotional presence, learning my emotions. That's how we had sex. So now every time that I had sex, it was based on the same narrative. Every relationship was based on that narrative. If I had something to give, then I had a sense of control. When I didn't have anything to give, I didn't have any control. When I didn't have anything to offer, it was a challenge for me to find something to offer. Exactly. Giving myself away in that sense. So no matter what I was doing, it became secondary. So now I'm already, this the key. I was already in competition with myself. Remember, I've talked about that before. You're in competition only with your trauma. So if I'm in competition or separated, trauma sitting in the seat, emotion sitting over here, or whatever seat my trauma's sitting in, I'm sitting in the opposite seat. Don't matter because the trauma's driving. I'm always going to be in competition. I'm always going to be in competition. I'm always going to feel like somebody's doing something I'm always going to feel like somebody's doing something, and the reason that they're doing it is to get away from me. I'm always going to feel like somebody's doing some shit to get away from me, to do better than me. They're using me to get better. I'm always going to feel that sense. I'm always going to react in that way. Because I'm looking at through the eyes. I ain't looking at a we, I'm looking at eyes. If I'm looking through eyes, then anything I see I'm going to think is going to be based on eyes. If I haven't made if I've not assessed my eyes, my personas, and I'm only compartmentalizing, that means I need that compartment to live. So now you start understanding why, when you think about the traumatic experience of your family, that family secret, your mom not saying some shit, your dad not saying some shit, you need them there. They serve your eye. They are the feeder of your opposition. So you can stay in the balance where you at. So you say, I'll get back to that later. Ain't no more getting back to it later anymore. If you haven't noticed it. I remember like when really sitting there like, damn, nigga, I just can't get back to it anymore like I used to. Can't get back to it like I used to. Don't work. I can't just hop, skip, and jump, get back over there like I used to. I can't do it anymore. Don't work. I noticed that I kept hitting more and more. Walls. Stuck in the walls. I noticed that my moods were becoming less fluid. There was more friction. I was starting to notice that I wasn't fitting in certain spaces. I started realizing that the protection was wearing off. All because I was trying to stay within old narratives of myself. See, when you come into your spiritual awakenings, you're shedding, you're going to be doing more internally. Your shit becomes more internal. It becomes less physical and more internal. That's what Bobby Hemmett was always breaking down in the aspects of, that's what they were trying to get to in the aspects of saying, breaking away from the material world and getting more into your internal sense, because from the internal, you understand from as within, it creates what's without you. So if I have a wealth of knowledge, but I'm not applying it, I become a poor righteous teacher. But when I start applying this information onto the internal, this wealth of my abundance, that wealth connects to my abundance, and now my space changes to the abundance. So anything that doesn't match that frequency needs to be removed. It will naturally remove itself. It'll die off by itself. You ain't got to do shit. And then you have to accept, nigga, I know what I need to do next. Instead of you sitting there masturbating with the identities. See, a lot of times we like to masturbate with the identities. How many of your identities do you masturbate with? Your physicals match your remember, everything you're doing in a physical sense is the intention to understand what you're doing internally. So if like it's like giving an example. When I use the mirror ritual, the mirror ritual is to help me. The mirror ritual is to help me set the tone of my internal. So after a while, that ritual, that physical need for this ritual no longer is needed. It doesn't mean that I shut off and don't use that ritual anymore. I just now have that ritual. It means something else. Like for me, I can use a mirror ritual for 50 different things. You know what I mean? I'm changing something internally. That's why I tell people, like, when you're doing your rituals and all this shit and shit start coming up, oh my God, I was asking for motherfuckers to be removed from my life, and now my cousin got in a fight, or this happened, or somebody. What did that cousin represent? What did that friend represent? That's the key. What did they represent? Did they make you uncomfortable? That means you didn't know how to, you can do it internal. The key of the aspect of the ritual first is to learn yourself. Like before now I can sit here, for example, I can sit here and picture and visualize visualize this big ass mirror in front of me, and I can see myself acting inside of the mirror. I can like automatically close my eyes and can do that right here just at all times. I can just close. All right, look at myself. Hey, saw myself. Come back out. Because you're coming to a state with yourself that's the integration. Like me, I tell people all the time, like, I'm always in a meditative state. I'm always in a state of awareness. Now when I meditate, it's basically just to set the tone or give myself a jump start. When I ground myself, when I'm outside, sun gazing, certain aspects I do not have to do as long as I had to do them. That makes sense? Like, there's a different intensity. Like for me, my first meditation ever was like 45 minutes. And I did this meditation for 45 minutes for like a whole, like, I think it was like during my first fast. I meditated 45 minutes a day, every single day, same damn time, every single day. The infatuation would happen, like, you know, when you start shaking and shit, like you start going into the REM state, with your eyes start shaking and you start feeling the vibration. I was ultimately learning how to go past that point and get to that point faster. So get to the point of vibration, or to that point of the point where they call stillness, or letting the point where all of the noise is sustained, is suspended, and I have it all. I've suspended the noise in my mind. And we can set up guided meditations for that. Sitting in that space, getting to the space of allowing everything to still, like, one of the visualizations that I used was like, think about Neo when he stopped all the bullets. Like, think about all of your thoughts being the bullets and like stopping the thoughts, right? Let them, and see how close you can let them get to you so you can feel them. And every time that you go in, see how close you can get to feeling them until you're able to discern what each thought is. So now I'm sitting in that space and I can discern what each thought is. So as I'm looking at these streams and I'm defining these streams of thought, I now can see the connections of where they're coming from and how they're reacting to my space. That's intimacy. That's that intimacy with yourself. That's that ultimate, that's you being in that form of you bypassing the reaction or interpreting some things and being able, and that goes into everything that you can do. Like, imagine going to the gym and you see a shorty over there, she doing her squats, and you look over at her and she look at you and smile, and you look back at her and you don't feel shame. Because it's your shame to make you react. But like, I wasn't looking at your ass. It's your shame to make you react. It's your shame to make you angry. It's the shame. Bitch, I wasn't looking at your ass. It's the shame that made you react. It's the persona that you're trying to maintain make you react. Instead of owning it. Instead of you looking like those squats are doing you well. And then walking the fuck away. Those squats are doing you well. It don't matter what diabolical shit you imagine in your mind with her doing squats. You say the squats are doing her well. Walk off. It's about owning it. That's a resource. It's a valuable resource. Because now every time you go to the gym, you see her working out. Now you have access to energy inside the space. Because that energy in the space is based on your presence. So if I'm in the presence of peace when I go into a space, that can be felt. That'll be felt inside the space. If I go into a space and I'm uptight, I'm angry, that's everything in the space reflects to that irrelevance. But see, since we're stuck in this state of being relevant, you're going to a space and everybody's presence is now they're in the present position. And the key. What distorts is when motherfuckers aren't present with themselves. See, that's what you keep reflecting. Your relevance until you own the points in your story where you were relevant, you can't become present. Therefore, every time you go into a space, you are motherfuckers, y'all meeting their own relevance. Think about how many conversations you had based on relevance. Anger. You angry. Both of y'all relevantly angry, but both of y'all angry for different reasons. Don't matter, but since yeah, it's you that what? That's what we do unconsciously anyway. You do that shit unconsciously anyway. You will go to a store at a certain time every single day. Similar to like when you was in school and you went to the library every single day knowing your ass did not like to fucking read. But because the librarian was in there and she was looking real good with that dress, or Shorty was in there and she'd be reading, she had them glasses on, she had her hair down a certain way, you sitting in there and you feel good as hell. Why do you think? Because it brought you to a point of peace. It brought you to a point of presence with your emotions. All your emotions went away. But since we didn't learn how to maximize it, you didn't learn how to maximize that shit. You just had to keep trying to repeat that same, you've been chasing that same feeling the entire time. I need something to make me happy because if I'm not happy, this gives me a whole feeling that I've never felt before and it makes me act a certain way. So when it's not there, you won't act that way. It's truth. Because now you got to deal with the guilt and everything else that was behind it. You sitting there, oh my God, I feel like I cannot do this, this, and this. Therefore, it will not happen. Some of y'all have been put in these positions for a reason. It's time to accept your test. You'll go all the way to fucking, what's another place? I remember going to I remember when I was homeless. I remember when I had no place to stay. And I remember there was a gas station up the street from, like, there was a gas station I always walk to. And there was this chick that worked there every Tuesday, Thursday. She worked Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. Knew her schedule like the back of my hand. Don't know why. Never had any money. I had a little bit of change or whatever. And I would go in there simply just to see her. It wasn't nothing in a physical sense of wanting to have sex with her or anything. It was just something about her energy in the space. Just me simply going there those days. But until I dealt with the feeling that would come up, the underline to the feeling of what would come up, I found myself trying to project into the space. So I always found myself, the nervousness would come up. All of these feelings and aspects would come up, even though, so now it was a challenge for myself. I was giving myself this challenge, like, maybe I like her. No, it wasn't about liking her. It was simply being in that space because we've had conversations, because every time I would go there on them days, it would be slow. And we have conversations. She was a great resource for me to learn aspects of myself. See, when you're going through these spaces, you learn the aspects of yourself. Now you can embrace experiences like crazy. It isn't talking about because 9 times out of 10, so many times you're in one relationship just to repeat that same relationship. You're in one friendship just to repeat that friendship. You're in one job just to repeat the same damn job. And you thought that was normal based on survival. Friends die, all this, I got to change my life, so I got to get rid of people. Not understanding the people that were in your life are the motherfuckers that need to teach you the lesson any damn way. Did you learn the lesson? It's always going to be, did you learn the lesson? Or else you're just going to procreate in a whole other damn different way. You still looking for what was there of your past and not understanding how it's evolved into your present. Everything evolves with you. Everything shifts as you shift. So if you haven't shifted, you'll feel it. That's where the separation comes from, because you ain't looking at things based on a certain angle with yourself. I remember being in so many different times, spaces with myself, and I'd be sitting there like, I remember always going back. But the only reason that I could go back was because it was still present. I didn't deal with it. I didn't deal with that shit. That's why I could go back to it so easily. I was holding on to some shit because my entire argument was holding on to shit. Let me hold on to this just in case. I'm going to hold on to this escape route just in case something don't work. One of the greatest things that I learned from one of my mentors was, ain't no plan B. Stop making a plan for a plan B. Stop making a plan for a plan B. Because every time you make a tone for a plan B, you're already accepting that plan A is not going to work. You must accept and use the discernment within plan A. That means if something comes up in your plan, this is how we understand the difference between plans and patterns. See with your pattern, you can create multiple patterns. I got this pattern, I got that pattern. I got the pattern when I'm over here, and I got the pattern when I'm over here. So I got these compartmentalized ass patterns. When it comes to my plan, your plan can be assessed and changed through circumstances. But the point of the plan is so you can understand that, there is going to be changes in this plan. Maybe that's not meant for this point. Maybe, okay, cool. Let me go look at this point. See, with that pattern, when you think about the intercourse, the intimacy with that pattern that you got, you want everything to be based on this pattern. But that pattern is based on time. That pattern, remember, time is emotion. Reaction is based on reaction, emotional relevance, and you staying relevant to those emotions. So you built a whole entire pattern based off guilt because your first experience was with guilt. So now everything you're doing is based on that guilt, that worth. So now everything that you define based on your pattern, they got to be based upon those same frequencies of that guilt, that insecurity, that all of that right there. So of course, yes, you're going to get mad, upset. You're going to experience the feeling. No, you're going to feel it, but you're not experiencing it. That plan forces you to experience it. That's why it becomes so hard. I remember one thing for me was making the actual steps to do things in authenticity to me and really taking care of my self-care routines and going from a point of trying to make everybody else on the same page and then accepting them where they're at. And then when they come into the space, I can be impartial and be like, well, this, and this. This is what I've noticed. This is what I've noticed. That's what I do. This is like, I tell people all the time, like, this isn't a job. This is me in authentic space. Like the same person always. But I know how to shift between learn, teach, learn, teach, learn, teach, learn, teach, learn, teach. Because I'm always in those positions. So either I'm creating through learning or I'm creating through teaching. Either way, I'm authentic to learning. Learn, plan, reciprocation, growth. Pattern, replace, burnout, replace, burnout, replace, burnout. So now you look at the patterns of your relationships, the patterns of your friendships, the patterns of your jobs. A lot of them shits is based on replace, burnout, replace, burnout, replace, burnout, replace. Do bad all by this, and I can do all this, and I'm going to do this. But that plan, that's assessment, that's reflection, that's me learning, that's me accepting, that's me engaging, that's me sitting in that space. It's a whole different fucking catalyst in that space because all of that leads you back to you. What you do, what most people do at this point in time based on the traumatic experience, it leads you away from yourself. That's why every time you gotta come back and face yourself, you feel worse than when you came back in. You running and running and running, it's working. They're losing the progress. Then one thing can happen, fuck your whole life up. Makes you be present. Now you're like, oh my God. Exactly, that's what it is. You sitting there, you want to keep replacing the parts in the car. You want to keep replacing the parts in the 1978 Dodge Dart that you got, knowing it's time to let that shit die. Man, I keep replacing the transmission and then you tell yourself these things like, I keep replacing the parts because they're cheap. Think about the frequency inside of your life. You cheapen your conditions and you have to stay naturally in a cheapened environment. You got to stay in a low frequency environment. Just for you to exist. So you can have the dream with no plan. When I started figuring out so many of these things with myself, it changed a lot of shit. Why I was trying to do so much. Why now where I'm at the point where I'm at now. Like sitting at looking at myself now, I'm like, it's so different. Like when I'm like now when I'm if something irritate me, something get to me, I'm able to sit with it longer and deal with it. No matter, like, I consciously set the time to deal with it. As opposed to before, I deal with it when I get off work. Now I got to take that energy with me into work. I'll deal with it when they're not here. Now I carry this energy. Now you got to think about what you've done. I'm going to deal with this when I get home. Okay. All right. You're going to deal with it when you get home. You carried this festering energy of anger inside of your mind. Now you get home. Now you angry. You don't want to deal with it. You in a relationship. You argue for no goddamn reason. Just angry as hell. All right, cool. Now you want to go feel relevant again. Because you have not apologized for the moment that you yelled at yourself and keep downing yourself. So now you need to feel relevant again. Now you go to the bar. Now shorty or the brother walk up to you and say you look cute or smile in your face. X hits you back up, whatever. Now you have a conversation with them. It's emotionally charged because now you're present because they're based on they're still based on the old argument. Ta-da! See how simply you just do it? There's nothing complex about it. You do it all the time. And then if you don't realize that you've been doing it, you just keep doing it. That pattern. Every time you get to a point in a relationship, every time you get to a point in a friendship, every time you get to a point in a job where it's not giving you what you want and you can't demand more of it because you are not giving it to yourself, you're not assessing yourself, of course it's not going to work because you're not giving it to yourself. That's why you can't see it in there. You can't see it in them because you have not yet seen it in yourself. So now you create the great debates to try to stay relevant to the emotion. So now everything that these people do, they are the byproduct of your emotion. Because if they're not there, guess what you naturally going to do? You're going to go try to find another space for it to happen anyway. That's why you have these compartments. You got this homegirl over here, nigga ain't shit. You got this homeboy over here, his homegirl ain't shit. His homegirl, I've talked about this before, his homegirl remind you of the last chick that fucked you over. Her homeboy remind you of the last nigga that fucked you over. And since you ain't dealing with your emotional aspects, and now that came to a point, now you sitting there looking at your entire life. Been there, done it, got the t-shirt. Done it so many times. Done it so many times. Tried to cover it up with the physical aspect. Like, ooh, let's have sex. Let's do this. Let's do this. We should be here. I remember saying this so many times. We should be here, here, and here. Until I had to sit down and be like, wait, the reason we're not there is because I'm not there. The reason that we're not there is because we're not doing something internally. Change whole conversations. It changed conversations. It changed the dynamic of relationships. Change the dynamic of your job. I remember the first time I did that was at my job. I've talked about it before. I remember the first time I did that, I was at my job. And really taking responsibility for myself. It was like I left, I went on vacation, came back, and my boss, like, I came back, sat down with my boss, and I had a long conversation with myself before going to go see my boss. And I remember before I could sit down, before I even sat down, all I remember is my keys, my cards, my security codes, everything was sitting on the table. I was like, I can't, the way that you're running, I can't, this is not beneficial. And I can express it, not from this emotional state, being emotionally present, not relevant, So I did it without anger. It was not with malice. It wasn't out of spite. It wasn't to say anything. Did that, came back, got my last check, bounced. Because right after that, something else came up into the position. See, you're going to start making these decisions. What I mean by making these decisions that will diminish the human quality of yourself. It's going to diminish your ability to react or your ability to sustain that old identity. You're destroying these aspects of your old identity. So now when you come into this new space with yourself, you're like, you know what? I know what I need to do now. Now, when the emotion comes up, because you're now present with the emotion, nervousness, upsetness, scared, all of these feelings, now that you're present with that feeling, now you can actually start dealing with it in that real time of that space. Instead of doing your usual, I'm upset. Why are you upset? I don't know why I'm upset, but I'm going to look at something outside of me and say why I'm upset. Why are you really upset? Why are you really mad? Why are you really frustrated? You spent so many years of your life covering it up. When are you going to give yourself that sit down? That's all I want you to do, because I desire you to be the fucking best. I come from a space where I've done it, doing it, continuously doing it, continuously learning these aspects, removing those points. I don't have to understand your experience, but I have compassion to understand the emotional underline. I understand how to decipher it. That's all I do is guide. That's all I do is a guide. One second. For a long time, I used to blame the quality of my life on everything happening outside of me, until I realized that the quality of my life had everything to do with the trash. If my life was trash, if my life was horrible, my life was going all these different ways, I had to realize that I had some trash I had to take out that was going on internally. There was some shit that I'm not dealing with. And as long as I'm not dealing with that, I can keep making these glamours. Glamours only last. Glamours are only fractals of the burnt out light. That you're trying to preserve something. You're trying to preserve this quantity variable in your life. So you don't keep trying to make that work. You keep making babies based off of that. You keep I'm gonna keep making little golems to make my life seem good. But you got a decision to make. As I talked about earlier, October 1st, which is today, is registration for the retreat. Registration for the retreat. The retreat is in March, the first annual shadow work retreat. The first retreat shall be for men. It's going to be for men first. Then I'm going to do the women's retreat. Then the plans for the co-ed relationship retreat. Co-ed/relationship. It's going to be a mixer. So 3 retreats. It's going to be 3 retreats all along. But the first retreat is going to be for men. It is now. It's out now. Registration begins. The entire package is in Surreyville, Tennessee. Picked a nice place, Surreyville, Tennessee. The big boss is a bohemian style cabin, 14 spots, 6 days, 5 nights, $720. $720 is all that includes your transportation while you're there, medicine, bed, food, water, all the stuff. Everything is already provided there. That does not cover your travel, and that does not cover your personal effects, your clothes, your shoe, the stuff that you need to bring, your toiletries, all that good stuff. They don't cover that. It covers everything that will be there for the 6 days, 5 nights. March 24th to March 29th. $720 covers everything. At the point of registering, when you register, I will be doing an evaluation of the first evaluation to see where you're at, what we're going to work on, so I can customize, because it's a pretty much basic plan that I have, and I'll email that. I can email that to you. It's pretty much a basic plan, but I would detail certain aspects for you and your certain aspect, because it's only 14 people. That, and it's because we gonna be in the middle of nowhere for 6 to 5 days, and 6 days, 5 nights. Like, nigga, we don't need no, if you make sense. But yeah, $180 deposit. Do at the booking, reserving your spot. I have 2 payment plans available. The first payment plan is a weekly, can be made bi-weekly. It basically breaks down to 20 payments of $30. 20 payments, $30, due by February 8th. Or you can do the 4th payment plan, which is 4 payments of $140, due by February 8th. Both are due by February 8th. But the deposit of $180 books your spot. The deposit is non-refundable unless there is an extreme circumstance. But your payments, let's say you make some payments. Let's say you make a couple payments and then the payment don't work or whatever. Like, then something happen, come up, then you'll get payments back. The reason that the deposit is not refundable is because that deposit can now be moved into another retreat or another event. See, once you got a spot, just because you didn't use the spot for that one, you still got a spot. That's why it's non-refundable. But it's about the aspects of like you setting that spot, that tone. March 24th to March 29th, 6 days, 5 nights. Fellow, it's going to be like setting, workouts, whole bunch of things, very worth it. You ain't got to do that part though. Everything else, this weekend only. So people see this video, October 1st, 2nd, 3rd, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. October 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Saying that for people that see the video later on. $60 for the 45-minute consultation. $60 this weekend only. Book that in. Also, all my other services, they're still available. Guided meditations, shadow therapy, all of those good points, human design, getting your human design chart, natal chart analysis, all that good stuff. All of those things are in that aspect. Because ultimately, I desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to be the best. It's going to take a level of honesty with yourself. So yeah, the retreat is in effect. Registration is from now until February 8th, basically. That is the last day to register. Last day to register will be February 6th. But the last day to pay all payments is February 20th. So if you're interested, hit me up in my inbox. Hit me in the inbox. If I don't have your email address, give me an email address. I'll send you the brochure packet. Go through it. You like it. Let's set something up. Set up the appointment for your evaluation. Get you plugged in. 14 spots only. 14 spots. 14 spots. 14 spots. They're gonna be going pretty quick. 14. But yeah, I'm going to do a nice little collective reading real quick before we get out of here. But I want y'all to, like, the key to all the things that we're doing is taking it to the higher level. When it comes to the aspects of sex, you just have sex every day. Ashe, ashe, ashe. When it comes to sex, you have sex every single day. Sex is conversation. Your emotional intelligence with yourself is the comprehension of those conversations in which you integrate with. That's how you create. Based on your level of emotional intelligence. Where are your emotions at when you're having these conversations? Because that's what's going to be created from the base of your shadow. You want to be the best? But yeah, this weekend, repeat it one more time. Open registration for the 4-hour retreat coming up in March, springtime. This weekend only $60. $60 for 45 minutes for the consultation. Go ahead and book that. All other things are regular price. All other services are regular price. Hell, it's a great Christmas gift. Yeah, great Christmas gift. At least, I'm not telling you, Yeah. Pull that first card off. First card is talking about the aspects of the Eight of Wands. Looking at that energy of that decision that people are making. High Priestess. Acknowledges some things. Chariot, moving forward. Four of Cups represents meditation. Seven of Pentacles represents that lack of fulfillment. Looking at what's been tethered to. So if we look at the Eight of Wands, the Eight of Wands gives us the aspect of the always trying to move forward in this infinite loop of trying to move forward really, really fast. The High Priestess telling you to sit down. The High Priestess is telling you to sit down before you move any further forward. It's time for some higher sense of it's time for a higher sense of acknowledgement. That decision for you to move hastily based on that old pattern is being stopped right now by that old aspect, the guidance with yourself. I keep getting guided. I keep doing this. You keep doing the same thing. Then you move forward. Then you wonder why when it comes time for you to really, you feel this mix with the pleasure of like, it feels good, but it doesn't feel like what I want. It's because you're still looking at it based on the old success narrative. Before it worked, before how you used to, I'm gonna go do this. Before what you used to do used to work because it was based on filling that old argument. As long as that argument lives, as long as you have not assessed that argument, you keep doing the same thing. You're gonna go another 365 days, 52 weeks, doing the same thing. All because you keep trying to move swiftly past sitting down and really understanding it. You keep trying to move past really, really fast, trying to really sit with yourself. You're only going to come back to the same position. Whether it be the job, the relationship, friendship, whatever. There's always going to be an element that is equivalent to the argument. Or it might be multiple streams of equivalent to that one argument. Or these arguments that you have not dealt with. The unresolved is what creates your space. The unresolved is always what's going to create your space. For you. You become secondary to your own thoughts. Becoming present, dealing with it, changes that outcome. Now you won't have that mix with the blend and you stop looking at, I should have been successful by now. I should have had $1 million by now. I should have had this by now. I should have been doing this by now. No, That was your best based on your pattern. Why? Give you the simple question. If when you really sit down with yourself and you say because, and your because is based on something in a physical sense, your age, that's entitlement, your amount of hard work, all the things that you've done, that's entitlement. You got to really start looking at things past entitlement. This spread is talking about you got to stop looking past entitlement. Entitlement is your age. Entitlement is your financial status. Entitlement is you did the work. No, because in truth, it's because of the trauma that you're at the age that you're at now, reacting in the developmental sense. It's because of your lack of emotional clarity, emotional understanding that you're in the position that you're in. It's because of these things. Until you understand and take acknowledgement of these points, you only going to keep moving forward doing the same thing. I'm not fulfilled this year. I didn't get this. And then you're going to put something else in that space. Obstacle equals debt. Opportunity is the resource. The opportunity that is the resource is going to make you the most vulnerable. The obstacle that creates the debt is going to make you the most relevant. You want to be relevant, and you want to be present. You want to be authentic, or you want to still be the same damn identity. Choice. And that leads to the 10 of Pentacles. It's time to embrace the wealth of the emotions, the thoughts, the power, everything that's great within you. As you look in here, you see the sign of Mercury, and you see that Scorpio sign right here, that Scorpio rising. It's time to kiss the old paradigm goodbye. The old train of thought goodbye. It's time to kiss the old thoughts goodbye. Remember the Judas? It's time to kiss the old aspects goodbye. It's time to start giving. It's time to start this new path. I'm pull one more card. Some of y'all are in this phase right here. Sitting there with yourself, thinking about your life, contemplating shit. But it's time to sit there. Time to sit there. And I give you some goodness. The Hermit sits at the crossroads. So what you want to do? Do you want to stay the same, or do you want to grow? Choice is yours. You can evolve or repeat. But yeah, I desire you to be the best. Appreciate you for stopping through, getting this message, getting this information. Felt good to get it off. Want to talk about getting deep in these aspects of sex? Go ahead, hit that Cash App. Reciprocate. Get ready for more. We got more coming. I love you. I want you to be the fucking best. Remember, you are deserving, but you are not entitled. It's time to put in that work. Much, much gratitude. It's time to put in that work. It's up to you. What you want to do. I love you. We love us. Ashe.